Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was reborn as a hollow and become Bleach King. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. You know this is all your fault, Tem. Oh, shut up, Dobie. Who the hell asked for your concern anyways? I was doing fine on my own. You call going AWOL on Konoha and going to that arrow hubby doing fine. I eventually killed him, didn't I? And so killed Itachi too, so I must have done the right thing. In the vast expanse of Hueco Mundo's desert, two large hollows can be seen arguing with each other. One resembled a bony humanoid dragon and the other one, a skeletal nine-tailed fox. These two were the reincarnation of Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. Former fierce rivals turned bitter enemies who had been shinobis in their former lives. As individuals, the two couldn't have been more different. Sasuke was the strong and brooding child prodigy renowned for his talents, while Naruto was the loudmouth village delinquent who also had the infamous reputation of being the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Kitsune. They had started out on the same team with Haruno Sakura, and even though their beginning had been rather rocky, they grew almost as close as brothers could be. But everything changed when Sasuke was marked by the notorious missing nin and rogue Sannin Orochimaru with the cursed seal, and no matter how hard he and his friends tried, he, survivor of the Uchiha massacre, was unable to resist its temptation. It was at this point where the paths of Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto began to diverge until one day, lured by Orochimaru's offer of unlimited power, Sasuke left Konoha. Naruto and his allies pursued him, of course, and when the blonde Jinchuriki managed to catch up to Sasuke at the Valley of the End, the two fought. Our first life and death encounter had ended in a stalemate as they clashed with the signature attacks, the Chidori and Rasengan, while being influenced by the cursed seal and Kyuubi. Both Sasuke and Naruto found themselves unable to deliver the killing blow, but it was Sasuke who still managed to walk away. Over the years, Naruto and Sasuke encountered each other numerous times but were still unable to resolve their differences. And then, 20 years after their initial conflict at the Valley of the End, they met there again as bitter enemies intent on annihilating each other once and for all. Naruto, in his capacity as the new Rokudaime Hokage, wanted revenge on the alliance of Sasuke and Akatsuki for their attack on Konoha, which left many of his friends and citizens dead. Sasuke wanted to kill Naruto because the blonde Jinchuriki was still intent on protecting the village, which, in his eyes, had caused the death of his entire family as well as the virtual extinction of his clan. The fight had been long and brutal, with neither person getting the edge for very long until finally, in a virtual replay of their first fight, charged up their signature attacks and attacked one another. But unlike their first fight, each person's attack connects. Shinobis from Konoha and Akatsuki who came on the scene find Sasuke and Naruto still standing with their hands plunged into each other's art, which effectively kills them both and ending their saga in the mortal plane. But this was not the end of their destiny, and what happens next was too strange and surreal for them. Although the memory had been hazy, both Sasuke and Naruto could remember a great hunger welling in them which caused them to ravage and devour anything they came across just to survive. Another memory had been struggling to maintain their sanity amidst countless voices fighting to take control over their body while still working on satisfying their hunger. Their hunger had eventually subsided enough for them to regain cognitive control over themselves, and the first thing they did was examine themselves to find the reason of their great hunger and discovering their new forms. Talking to the more intelligent beings they met in the vicinity, more like Threaten, they also discovered that the place they were in right now was called the Manos Forest, which was a place in this world called Hueco Mundo, and that they had also been Manos themselves before evolving to their current form. But for them to evolve even further, they would still need to feed on other hollows. Something which they were not rely comfortable with, but soon realizing that it was a necessity to survive. So feed they did, and each reigned over their own little area of the Manos Forest for a while. And then, they met each other again. It was an old impulse which allowed them to recognize each other despite their new appearance, and that was all it took for them to start their conflict all over again. Such was the ferocity of their fight that the other hollows in the Manos Forest hid in fear of getting caught in the middle. Even the normally mindless Manos Grande had enough sense to steer clear of the too powerful Ajuch. as when they were trying to tear each other to pieces. Their fight eventually spilled out into the white sands of Hueco Mundo's desert, where they battled for what seemed like an eternity until both gave into exhaustion. But neither was done by a long shot, and since they were too tired to finish their conflict, they resorted to words. And that's the situation we find the two in. And what about that Team UP with Akatsuki? Do you have any idea how many of our friends you killed? Naruto asks with venom in his voice. And do you have any idea what Konoha did to the Uchiha clan? They had no right to exterminate my entire family for the sins one man. Sasuke shot back. They made my life a living hell. My life was a living hell from the very beginning, and you don't see me bitching about it. And believe me when I tell you that I had a lot to be upset about. Naruto shouts back. At least you had a family. I had absolutely nothing. This had the desired effect on Sasuke, who falls silent or a few moments before asking in a calmer tone of voice. How do you do it? How do you not lose yourself in your hatred, especially with that fox's voice rambling in your head all the time? I think about the people I have to protect, no matter how few they are, and that keeps me going every time. And if you came to any of us with your problem, we would have helped you. Naruto answers. Hell, we would. Eldiv watched Konoha burn with you if managed to convince us that the village deserved it. When Sasuke doesn't respond to this, Naruto sighs and speaks again. Look, I guess there's no use dwelling in the past now, given our current situation. What we need to do is do what we can to survive out here if we wanna have a chance to see our loved ones again. I won't accept this as our fate for eternity. And if there is even just a slim chance I can break that chain, I will. So what say we team up again just like old times? Sasuke studies his old friend for a moment before chuckling. You never change, Dobi, always blurting out things without thinking them through. Fine, we'll team up again. But just in case you haven't noticed, we're monsters now. Sasuke said and moves his bat-like wings for emphasis. So how do you propose we work around this particular problem? Naruto sat down on the sand. The hind leg of his beastly form reaches up and scratches his ear in a vaguely canine-like manner. Quote, I've heard some of the Ajukas saying that every once in a while, some guy in a white suit goes to the Manos forest to recruit a few of them. I dunno what for, but I heard them say something like Arankar. If the current form Sasuke was in had any eyebrows, it would have shot up. Arankar, you say? Yeah, you know about him? Naruto asks. Yeah. Sasuke confirmed with a nod of his massive head. Rankars are supposedly hollows who removes their masks and gains the powers of a Shinigami. The powers of a Shinigami. As in the Shinigamis who was supposed to hunt hollows down in the first place. Naruto had told them about the arch-enemies of the hollows, the Shinigamis. At first, Naruto and Sasuke had been confused since they knew that there was only one Shinigami. But the older Ajukas had informed them about another race of spirits who supposedly lived only to hunt them down. Of course, the two ex-Konoha shinobis had thought that something about the story didn't add up, but decided it couldn't hurt to avoid Shinigamis for the meantime until they could get the facts straight. The very same, Sasuke replies. The Ajukas have talked to says that the power of an Arankar is on a whole different level than those we can see at the Manos forest. That sounds like our ticket out of this dump. Naruto said with a vulpine grin. But I can't help but feel that there's a catch somewhere. That may be true, Sasuke said with a grimace. But so long as it doesn't involve saddling us with a damned hickey or anything, it wouldn't hurt to find out for ourselves. Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment before speaking. Then if we're gonna do this, then we should have some kinda contingency just in case things don't work out in our favor. What sort of contingency? Sasuke asks. I was thinking that we purposely hold back our true powers in case we're ever going to become Arankar. Naruto proposed. There's a lot about this whole Arankar business that we don't know, and this acquiring power deal smells like something Orochimaru might have come up with. If we hold back and slowly work our way up the ladder, we can watch them and find out what they're really up to. And if we don't like what we see, we split. Basic shinobi tactic. Deception is your best weapon. Sounds like a plan, Sasuke said with a approving nod. One problem though, from what you said about a guy recruiting Ajukas, it's very possible that they're getting something that breaks the Hollow's mask artificially. That would probably be more efficient since it'll probably make us stronger than Norma. L. Arrancar, but we don't know what kind of side effects that may have. There's only one answer to that problem. We break these masks off ourselves. Naruto stated, tapping his skeletal, vulpine mask with a claw. It'll also be dangerous, but at least it's better than being some sicko's labrat. At this point, both can hear their stomachs growl loudly, making Sasuke laugh out and say, "Yeah, but we can't do it on an empty stomach." The tone of his voice then turns serious. "And if we're supposed to impress them enough to recruit us, our current level of powers won't do it. As much as I hate to say it, we have to go back to Mano's forest to get stronger." Feeding frenzy? Naruto asks, licking his lips expectantly. Feeding frenzy? Sasuke confirms with a toothy smile. The two monstrous creatures gets up and starts their trek back to the Mano's forest. Several months later, a lone Arrancar walks into Mano's forest and looks around. Wearing the typical Arrancar outfit of a white jacket, white hakama pants and sandals over white socks, he was a slenderly built individual with a perpetual frown on his melancholic expression, pale, almost albino-like complexion, short and messy black hair. Green eyes with slit pupils, dark teal lines that descend from his eyes which made it look like he was crying. The remainder of his hollow mask is the horned helmet on the left side of his head. The Arrancar seemed a little confused by the activity inside the forest. Normally when he came here to recruit Ijukas, it was teeming with hollows of all shapes and sizes. But now it was, surprise, ngly quiet, and even the Ijukas he came to recruit were nowhere to be seen. What hollows he could sense in the vicinity seemed to be hiding from something or someone. What could have terrified them this badly? The Arrancar's questions were answered when he spots two humanoid-looking individuals wearing what seemed to be rags and furs walking towards him and carrying weapons in their hand. The pale Arrancar raises an eyebrow in interest. These two were Arrancars who had removed their masks by themselves out here in the wild. And although their spiritual pressure seemed a little unstable, they tell they were quite powerful for Arrancars. Only Arrancars made using the Hogoku were supposedly stronger because it drew out more of their potential, but it was clearly not the case with these two. It would also explain why there were much less hollows here than before. And judging from the amount of scars these two had and the way the others' hollows hid themselves when they appeared, EY must have been feeding for quite a while now. If that was the case, then these two would make an excellent measuring stick as to how powerful a Hogoku created Arrancar could possibly be. As the two drew closer, the pale Arrancar took a better look at the new Arrancars. Both were males and seemed relatively well built and fit. The one on the right had jet black hair while his companion was a blonde. The black-haired Arrancar's hole was located on the left part of his chest while the blonde's hole was on his navel. The remnants of both their masks hid their eyes and most of their faces except their mouths. The black-haired Arrancars looked like the top half of a three-horned dragon's skull while the blondes looked like a fox with protrusions resembling whiskers and smiling eyes which reminded the pale Arrancar of a certain white-haired Shinigami captain and ally. Both carried their Zanpakutos in their hands. The dark-haired one had what appeared to be a sheathed shakudo while the BL wielded a short spear with a three-pronged blade, author's note, Thinkarishan Kanai cheeky smiley face on one end and an iron ball on the other. A weapon which Ulquiorra believed was called Orochimaru. The blow. NDE also carried what seemed to be the remains of a rather large hollow's mask as a shield of sorts. The two new Arrancars stops in front of the pale Arrancar and studies him. "I assume you two are reason why there are less hollows in this forest?" The pale Arrancar asks. "So what if we are?" The blonde in the fox mask asks curtly. "Who wants to know?" "Forgive my manners. My name is Ulquiorra Schiffer and I am the Quattro Espada in the Arrancar army. I come on behalf of my liege Aizen Sosuke and would like to offer you a spot in his army. You look quite powerful and we could always use new, formidable comrades." The Arrancar identified as Ulquiorra Schiffer stated. I don't know about this." The dark-hair Arrancar said. "We're doing all right on our own. What do you have to offer us that we don't already have?" "A chance to strike back against those who have wronged you and the very beings who hunt us down." Ulquiorra answers. as well as an opportunity to rule over everything there is alongside Lord Aizen. The two Arrancars looks at each other for a few moments before looking back at Ulquiorra. Rule everything there is I kinda like the sound of that. The blonde said. Revenge is a pretty good incentive for me. I guess I'm in too. The black-haired Arrancar said. Very well then, I shall take you to Lord Aizen. Ulquiorra said. May I know your names then? Azuki Sano. The black-haired one who was Sasuke replies. Namejan Naoto's the name. Nice to meet ya. Ulquiorra Schiffer. The blonde who was actually Naruto answered. And so began the new lives of Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke as members of Aizen Sosuke's Arrancar army. What does the future hold for them? It had already been a nearly half a century since Naoto and Sano were recruited into the Arrancar army by Ulquiorra himself, where they trained themselves in the use of their new abilities and honing their skills while serving as unranked soldiers. And as they had agreed upon, they held back their true abilities and even discovered a method to seal off most of their Reiatsu. But despite their best efforts to suppress their powers and keep a low profile, they knew that their spiritual pressure was still too high to remain unranked soldiers for very long without arousing suspicion. So they did what any good shinobi does when faced with a difficult pred. Knowing that a vast majority of the unranked Arrancars were an ambitious lot who wanted nothing more than to advance rank, Sano and Naoto went with the flow and began to make a name for themselves to get them noticed by their superiors. Sano became known for his swordsmanship, speed and uncanny ability to read an opponent's moves and react accordingly in a battle. Naoto established a reputation for his raw power, sheer 2. GHNESS and Resilence, as well as his unconventional battlefield skills and tactics. Both also demonstrated a level of mastery over their own abilities that was beyond any normal Arrancar and possessed intelligent, insightful minds. Their hard work eventually pays off when one day, they were summoned to meet the head of the Arrancar army himself, Aizen Sosuke. And this is where we find the two Arrancars today. Walking down the long hall of Las Noches towards the throne room, Naoto and Sano looked a lot different from the wild, feral state which Ulquiorra found them in Maino's forest. Sano wore a typical Arrancar uniform, except that his white jacket was unzipped almost all the way and instead of the normal sash around his waist, opted for a thick rope. He also wore a pair of long, black fingerless gloves as well as white hakama socks and sandals, and secured to the back of his belt was his Zanpakuto, author's note, think modified version of Sasuke's Shippuden outfit. Naoto's outfit consists of an unzipped short-sleeved white longcoat with an upturned collar instead of the normal short Arrancar jacket over a white vest, white hakama secured by a black sash, and white socks and sandals. Like Sano, he also wore long fingerless gloves, though his was white and had metal plates on the back of the hand. Naoto held his Zanpakuto in his right hand. As they neared the main throne room, a sneering, arrogant voice stops them in their tracks. Well, if it isn't Lord Aizen's new golden boys. A sneering voice said. Both Naoto and Sano looks back and sees another pair of Arrancar looking at them. One was a runty-looking Arrancar with jagged teeth whose mask remnant was the hammerhead-shaped helmet on his head. His taller companion had long blonde hair with a horned mask fragment on the top of his head. Excuse me, were you talking about us? Sasuke asks coolly. Who else would I be talking about? The runty Arrancar stated, walking towards the two and studying them up close. You guys don't look like much. Just some damned Jillians who wanna be Arrancars. Why would Lord Aizen have so much interest in you when he already has us numeros? Naoto and Sano glances at each other. Numeros were the combat specialists of the Arrancar army, and these two were obviously part of them. But what did they seem so hostile? Stop that, D-Roy. We'll get in trouble if you keep this up. The blonde Arrancar said. I'm just reminding these Jillians of their place here, Ilfort. The one identified as D-Roy said. Our place right now is with Lord Aizen and you're delaying us, buddy. Naoto stated in a bored tone of voice. D-Roy was instantly in Naoto's face. You talkin' back at me, Jillian? Don't you know who you're talking to? He snarls. What, you goin' senile in your old age? I mean, you even forgot your name. Naoto said cheekily. In response, D-Roy turns away for a moment before whipping right back with a spear hand, intent on running Naoto through. But Naoto quickly reacts by icing his left hand and uses the metal plate on the back of his glove to block the attack. "You're dead, Jillian. Nobody makes a fool of me and lives." D-Roy snarls. "That's 'cause nobody ever bothered me. 'Cause you're so weak that they'd be accused of bullying if they tried." Naoto shot back and rams the iron ball of his Rochin into D-Roy's stomach and drives him back. Ilfort looked like he was about to jump in and intervene on his comrade's behalf, but in a burst of sonido, Sano disappears from his spot and reappears, blocking Ilfort's path. "Let's let the children work out their differences on their own, shall we?" Sano stated, his hand lingering over his sheathed Zanpakuto. Back with D-Roy and Naoto, the short numero recovers from the blow by Naoto and glares at him. "That's it, Jillian. Lord Aizen or not, I'm gonna destroy you for laying your filthy hands on me." D-Roy snarls as he starts to draw his Zanpakuto, putting Naoto on his guard. All of a sudden, a crushing spiritual pressure Ptly stops the fight between the two factions as another group of Arrancar steps into view. There were 4 of them. One was a calm-looking tall and slender Arrancar with braided black hair who say mask remnant covered his head and left eye. Another one was a big, muscular red-haired Arrancar whose mask fragment consisted of the bony protrusion on the bridge of his nose. The third one was a big and fat Arrancar with the right part of his face covered by the remnant of his mask. But it was the Arrancar wearing a light blue hair and eyes with the jawbone on the right side of his face which catches the attention of Naoto and Sano. The guy had an insane spiritual pressure which he didn't even try to hide. They haven't felt anything like it since their meeting with Ulquiorra at the Manos forest. So this could only mean that this Arrancar is an Espada. D-Roy, Ilfort, where the hell have you two been? The unnamed Espada bark then looks at Naoto and Sano. And why the hell are you messing around with these Jillians? Before Naoto could retort, Sano was instantly behind him and covers his mouth with his hand and spoke. "Our apologies. We were summoned by Lord Aizen when these two stopped us for some reason," Sano said, gesturing towards D-Roy and Ilfort. "Bullshit," D-Roy snarled. "These frickin' Jillians were picking a fight with us and—" "Shut up," the Espada growled. N studies both Naoto and Sano who felt as if he was sizing them up. "So you two are the guys Lord Aizen called the ones Ulquiorra was talking about? If they are the same Arrancars which Ulquiorra was talking about, then it is fortunate that we stepped in when we did," the tall, calm Arrancar said, then faces Ilfort and D-Roy. "For your information, these two are the only hollows known to They removed their masks inside the Manos forest and become Arrancar." "Inside the Manos forest?" D-Roy exclaimed. "But wait, if they became Arrancars in there, then what happened to the other hollows in the forest?" "Many were devoured by them obviously," the tall Arrancar said casually. "And that would mean that their power is not to be trifled with, especially by you two at your current levels." "What? No way. These two are them," Ilfrt said, then looks warily at Naoto and Sano. Unfortunately for him though, their masks hid their expressions quite well and all Ilfort got was 2 masks looking back at him impassively. "What are your names?" the Espada asks curtly, eyeing the two in interest. "Azuki Sano, Namejan Naoto, Jigar Jax, see you around," and with a curt nod, Grimjow and his companions leave. "Well, that went well," Naoto said in disgust as they continued their trek towards the throne room. "I hate bullies like that D-Roy who thinks they can push us around just 'cause he ranks higher than us. While I'll admit that he was annoying the hell out of me, did you really have to antagonize him?" Sano asks. "We are trying to keep a low profile, right? Like I said, I hate bullies like him," Naoto said. "He reminds me so much of the kids that used to beat me up just for the hell of it when I was small." "Yeah, well, I was more interested with that Espada, Grimjow," Sano said, thoughtfully. "He didn't seem like the type who'd just take orders from anybody, and he's just the 6th. I wonder how strong the other Espadas are." "Forget the Espadas. How strong is this leader of He Arrancar army to have powerful hollows like them following his orders?" "Who is this guy anyways?" Naoto said. "I guess we're about to find out, won't we?" "Yeah, let's focus on this meeting with this Aizen Sosuke. Maybe we'll find out some more about him," Sano said as they reached the door of the throne room. They pushed the massive dew-darkened throne room. "Welcome my brother Arrancars," A voice speaks out. The entire room brightens and their attention turns towards the throne. Sitting on the throne and glaringly conspicuous by the uniform he wore was a Shinigami. Instinctively, Sano reaches for his Zanpakuto while Naoto brandishes his Rochin. There will be no need for that. Another voice cuts in. From behind the throne, Ulquiorra steps out into view and studies the two Arrancar in front of him. Excellent reaction. It's just as I expected of you two. But the Shinigami you see in front of you is not an enemy. He is in fact the leader of the Arrancar army, Lord Aizen Sosuke. Ulquiorra said. The two Arrancars looks at the Shinigami with a bit of skepticism. With his bookishly plain looks, he did not seem dangerous. But of course, they knew better. The eyes that studied them behind the glasses were deceptively cruel and calculating, plus the spiritual pressure that the Shinigami was giving out seemed malevolent in nature. The two then quickly gets down on one knee and bows their head as a sign of respect. Forgive our rudeness, Lord Aizen. We did not know you were our leader. Sano stated. Aizen waves a hand dismissively. Please stand up, you two. It's understandable because you haven't formally met me yet. You acted properly and responsibly as members of the Arrancar army. The two Arrancars gets back up to their feet, giving the Shinigami captain an opportunity to study them further before speaking. I have heard interesting things from Ulquiorra about the two of you, Azuki Sano and Nameji Naoto. You are the only two known Arrancars known to have evolved Fr. Omijuka's inside Hollow Forest, which is quite a feat. And you have achieved so much in such a short amount of time even as unranked Arrancars. We can assure you, Lord Aizen, that we simply do our due ties to the best of our humble abilities. Naoto said with a bow, causing Sano to glance at him from the corner of his eyes while thinking. Laying it on a little thick, aren't we, Naoto? Fortunately, his hollow mask hid his reaction quite well. I am very much aware of that. And such exemplary performance must be rewarded, which is why I called the two of you here to meet you and give you your rewards personally. Aizen said, then stands up from his throne and walks down towards them. Now then, a while ago, I sensed a disturbance somewhere outside this room. I take it you two were involved in it in some way. Naoto and Sano visibly tenses up at this. Lord Aizen, please let us explain. Sano began but was silenced by Aizen with a raised hand. There's really no need for you to explain yourselves. Aizen said a little too kindly while placing a hand in each of their shoulder. I understand the difficulties of being an unranked soldier. Some of those in authority tend to get overprotective of their own positions, and any potential promotion can be seen as a threat to their own place as a member of my army. But you two seem to have handled the situation rather well even against numerous. Your praises are not necessary, Lord Aizen. Sano said. We simply defended ourselves. Just because they were numerous and we weren't does not give them the right to antagonize a comrade who is of a lower rank. Of course they don't, Aizen said, which is why I am promoting the both of you to the numerous, though you will remain unnumbered. Aizen then walks past them while thinking. But I also have reports of your field performance. The discreet and efficient way you accomplish your missions leads me to believe that you've had some sort of subversive training in your past lives, and it seems like such a shame to waste your potential as mere numerous. So that's why I have decided that you two will serve as special operatives in the Arrancar army, reporting directly to me. Lower than Espadas and Priverns, but certainly higher than a numero. The responsibilities will certainly be greater, but I am confident that you will be able to accomplish it. So do you two accept? The two Arrancars goes back down to one knee and bows their head. It would be our honor, Lord Aizen. Both stated. Much later, as the two exited Los Noches for their patrol, Naoto speaks up. So what do you think of Aizen Sosuke? Naoto asks. Sano thinks for a moment before answering. He may seem harmless, but so was Kabuto when we first met him. And the vibe I'm getting from Aizen Sosuke is 10 times worse than what even Kabuto is capable of. I agree, Naoto said. I don't think he trusts us either, because we're probably unknown variables to him. Why else would he assign us to be special operatives, who reports directly to him? Aizen Sosuke is certainly a very dangerous opponent. But luckily, so are we. We just have to watch ourselves around him and play along for now. Naoto said before he and Sano disappear into the desert of Hueco Mundo. Oh, Naoto-kun, Sano-kun. Both Naoto and Sano groaned involuntarily. They knew the source of that sickly sweet voice anywhere, and whenever it called them, it usually meant trouble for them. And as hard as they may try to avoid her like the plague, she still manages to find them. But then again, they are pretty well known around Hueco Mundo for the past few decades or so being the only non-Espada ranked Arancars who receives their missions, mostly scouting missions, directly from Aizen Sosuke himself. All have wondered what made these Arancars so special that Aizen has personally selected them for missions. A number had even attempted to kill them off to take whatever influence they had for themselves. But all who tried to do so simply disappeared. Right now though, it was Sano and Naoto who wished that it was them who disappeared. That was preferable over dealing with the little spitfire of an Arancar who was currently harassing them. "Hello Lynette, nice to see you again," Naoto said as he turns around. Behind them stood a young female Arancar wearing a skimpy white bikini as a uniform with a horned helmet-like mask fragment which also covered her left eye. In the course of their service under Aizen, both Sano and Naoto had the opportunity to work with the Espadas. Lynette was the sole fraction of the lazy-as-hell Primera Espada, Stark. But as they later discovered, she was all the motivation which Stark needed. They had met Stark and his fraction during a mission to the real world and were shocked by Lynette's random acts of abuse against her own superior. But even more surprising was Stark's general lack of concern of what his own fraction was doing to him, which included straddling him and pounding away or shoving her fist down the Primera's throat just to wake him up. Sano and Naoto would have found it funny if they weren't so damn scared for her welfare. Much to their chagrin, Lynette took a shine to the duo and started to hang out with them with or without their consent or asking for a spar, which was more like target practice for Lynette since neither Sano or Naoto wanted to hurt the Primera's fraction. Stark on his part saw this as an opportunity to get away from his occasionally abusive subordinate and often asked Sano and Naoto to take care of her while he was away on a mission or was simply dozing off. And as fond as Naoto and Sano were of Lynette, time spent with the little spitfire can sometimes get quite tiresome. "Don't. Hi Lynette, me Blondie. You two promised that you'd come over and play with me," Lynette said crossly, tapping her foot impatiently. Naoto and Sano glances at one another as if prompting each other to answer her. After a long silence, Naoto sighs and faces Lynette. "Sorry about that Lynette, we were kinda busy with our work so we didn't really have any time to visit you," Naoto said with an embarrassed grin. "But you two promised to help me out with my Sero," she whined. "We did, but that was until you tried to fry us with a Sero as practice," Sano stated bluntly. "And frankly speaking, I'd rather not be anyone's target practice." "Aw come on, I already told you that it was an accident, didn't I?" Lynette griped. "Accident my foot," Sano moo. "You'd probably kill someone for practice if you thought you could get away with murder." "Nah." Odo elbows his friend's rib lightly and was rewarded with a glare before the blonde looks at Lynette again. "Ah, no worries Lynette. I'm sure you didn't mean it. But we really have been pretty sigh lately so we can't really help you with training. But maybe you can convince Stark-sama to teach you. He isn't an Espada for nothing you know, and I bet he'd be a way better teacher," Naoto said. "Come on guys, how can I get any training from him when that lazy ass is busy studying the insides of his eyelids, right?" Lynette complained. "Hey now, is that any way to talk about the guy you're supposed to serve?" A tired-sounding voice grumbles. The three Arancar looks towards the source and sees a long-haired Arancar with what seemed like a bony necklace as his mask fragment walked towards them. Stark's demeanor and habits reminded the two ex-Konoha nins so much of their former comrade Shikamaru that it was scary. "Greetings Stark-sama," Sano and Naoto greets with a bow which the Primera Espada simply waves off. "Skip it you two, you know I don't care much for formalites," Stark said, then looks at his fraction. "Harassing these two again Lynette. I wouldn't have had to if you paid more attention to me." Lynette answers with a pout. "That's because you ask for too much attention," Stark comments dryly. "And what's with this sudden interest of yours in training? What's wrong with wanting to get stronger?" Lynette shot back. "If anything else, you're supposed to be the one training me since I am your fraction. Would you leave me alone if I did?" Stark asks, to which Lynette responds with a swift kick to his shin, making the Primera hop around comically in pain. Stark then looks at Sano and Naoto, who was watching the entire scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. See what I have to put up with. I swear I get no respect. She wouldn't be Lynette if she started now. Naruto stated cheekily, earning him a mild glare from Stark which effectively shuts him up. In any case, can you go back to our room, Lynette? I need to have a talk with these two alone. Stark said, his expression suddenly turning serious. However mischievous Lynette may be, she knew ND recognized the look Stark was giving her. It usually meant that there was something serious going on that he couldn't discuss in front of her, or that someone was about to die at his hands. She hoped it wasn't the latter, since she was rather fond of Naoto and Sano. The Frashon doesn't press the issue and simply nods before walking off to their quarters, leaving the Primera Espada with Naoto and Sano, who were wondering what Stark wanted to talk to them about. Naoto, Sano, walk with me please, Stark said. Naoto and Sano looks at each other and shrugs their shoulders, then follows Stark as he takes a stroll. The trio walked in silence for a while and stops in a remote balcony looking out into the deserts of Hueco Mundo. After a moment of studying the scenery in front of him, Stark finally spoke. Do you two know the reason why I joined Aizen-sama and became an Espada? When neither Naoto or Sano answered, Stark took it as his cue to speak further. I was a Vasto Lord and as such, was at the very top of the food chain in Hueco Mundo. But that also meant that a lot of others wanted to bring me down and take the spot for themselves. I was one of the strongest, not because I wanted to, but simply because I had to in order to survive, no more no less. And honestly speaking, I was getting tired of fighting for my life on a regular basis. Then Aizen-sama came and brought a semblance of order in Hueco Mundo. I joined him and became one of the Espada because I agreed with his ideals and beliefs. And as an added bonus, no right-minded Arrancar would dare attack me because apart from the fact that they already know I can blow them away easily, I'm also one of the elite chosen by Aizen-sama himself. Stark continues before falling silent. The Primera seemed to be thinking deeply. With all due respect, Stark-sama, but I think that's not the real reason why you brought us here to talk, isn't it? Naoto said. Nor is it the reason why you asked Lynette to leave. Stark looks back and gives the two an even look before leaning back on the railing and looking up at Hueco Mundo's sky. You two don't really miss much, don't you? We were taught before to look underneath and had a lot of practice with it, Sano said, but we didn't even need that to see something's bothering you. I see. Stark thought for a moment before sighing in resignation. You're both right. That's not what I wanted to speak to you about, and the reason why I sent Lynette away is because I don't want to involve her, so in case something goes wrong, she'll be blameless. Truth be told, I'm no longer confident that Aizen-sama's plan will prove beneficial to us as a race. Stark said. As a matter of fact, I think that his methods might do more harm than good. Sano and Naoto's reactions were hidden by their mask, but Stark could sense a sudden tension around them. What I'm saying is, what he's planning to do may affect the delicate balance between the worlds. So if there is really proof that what he's doing may be detrimental to all our survival, then as a ranking member of this army and as a rational being, I may have to take him down myself. Why are you telling us this? You know full well that we serve directly under Aizen-sama, and what you're even thinking is a treasonous act in by itself. What makes you so sure that we won't rat you out to Aizen-sama? Sano asks tersely. At this, Stark smiles and answers, come on, I didn't become Primera Espada just because I'm the strongest one around. And contrary to popular beliefs, I'm actually a pretty observant guy. And know a thing or two about looking underneath the underneath. Stark looks down at them, all traces of humor or laziness gone from his face. First off, I don't believe that the both of you are who you say you are. For whatever reason it is, you're hiding something from the rest of us, and for that reason alone, I'm well within my rights as an Espada to execute you on the spot as potential threats. This statement immediately puts Naoto and Sano on their guard. In their current level, they knew that they had little or no chance of beating arguably the strongest Arrancar in existence right now. But that didn't mean that they wouldn't try if it came to that. Seeing that Sano and Naoto had suddenly tensed up, Stark raises a hand to reassure them. Relax guys. I'm simply speaking figuratively. You two don't look like megalomaniacs to me, and I don't believe that your intentions and goals are that much different from mine. Don't tell me you're satisfied with the way things are going here in Hueco Mundo now. Sure, Aizen-sama brought a bit of order to this world, but some of the things he has implemented simply makes things here more difficult than it should be. Sano and Naoto knew what Stark was referring to. While Aizen did bring order to the otherwise chaotic world of Hueco Mundo, he was also the cause of many disputes amongst the Hollows because of his background as a Shinigami, which he suppresses with ruthless efficiency. And despite the man's claims that he was doing everything for the benefit of the Hollow race, he was obviously doing it for his own selfish ambitions. Okay, supposing that what you say is true, why come to us about this? Wouldn't it be better to join forces with another Espada? Naoto asks. Stark shook his head. It's not a very good idea to get allies from my peers at this time. I think you should know that there are only two Espadas whom I can probably count on. One being Hannibal and the other is Nelliel. The latter name causes Sano and Naoto to frown. The former Tercera Espada had reportedly deserted their ranks a while back along with her two fractions. But they also knew that she had many enemies, which included the current Quince Espada, no. Itra Jiruga, who hated her somewhat pacifistic ways. Andabel and Nelliel are the only ones reasonable enough to even consider my plans. But Nelliel's gone now, so that leaves me with a shortage of allies. Because the rest of the Espadas aside from Hannibal are either very loyal to Aizen-sama or are simply too much of a wildcard to even consider. I've got some support from the Priverns, but even they won't be enough. Stark continues, then stares at Naoto and Sano. That's where you two come in. I told you before that I'm a pretty observant guy, and I'm neither blind nor foolish enough not to see that. You're obviously hiding your true strength. Apart from the fact that you operate under Aizen-sama's orders, I need strong allies who can back me up, and I know you two are strong. But more importantly, you two have your own opinions and insights and don't seem to be the type of guys who would blindly follow orders or take any crap from anybody without good reason. Naoto and Sano exchanges a low okay and nods at each other before turning their attention back to Stark. If you're serious about all this, then we'll cooperate with you, Sano said, then adds in a serious tone of voice. But understand that this is only a means to an end, and Espada or not, we won't hesitate to take you out if you betray us. You were right when you said that we were hiding our true strength. But you have no idea just how much we're holding back, and we plan to keep it that way for now, Naoto stated. And for the record, we're not doing this because we believe you. We're doing this to protect Lilynette when the time comes. She deserves better than this kind of life. You're right, it's better if Lilynette's not involved in whatever it is we are planning, Stark said. So I take it you two are willing to cooperate with me. Both Sano and Naoto nods their heads at the Primera Espada. Both knew that the step they were about to take was a dangerous one. But then again, it wasn't their way to just sit back and watch as another madman tried to destroy innocent lives for their own amusement. Never again. So this is the town of Karakura, Sano said, looking down at the town far below them. Doesn't look that much different from any other towns? It has been a few years since Naoto and Sano had joined forces with Stark. The alliance had been a little uncomfortable at first, but little by little, E2 began to open up to the Primera, who proved himself quite trustworthy and had even taken the two under his guidance. Currently, Naoto and Sano floated in midair high in the skies above Karakura serving the town after stepping out of a Garganta. Both had been ordered by Aizen to meet with another Arrancar, then observe the happenings in the town for a short period of time. His motives for igning them this mission was still unknown though, and when Stark heard about it, he grimaced and cryptically told the two to watch themselves against both allies and enemies. I know. I wonder what's so important about this town. Naoto wonders. More importantly, where's our contact? Sano grumbles as he looks around. A few moments later, the duo senses the minor sonic boom which indicated an Arrancar's arrival via sonido. Pardon my tardiness. Wrapping up my research proved to be more troublesome than anticipated, a polite voice said to them from behind. Both Arrancars looked back and came face to face with the Octava Espada. Zael Aporo grants. Both Naoto and Sano now knew why Stark told them to take care of themselves against allies and enemies alike. The notoriously cruel and sadisty Zael was the Espada's scientific genius, who was known to conduct his sick experiments using even fellow Arrancars as test subjects. If he was able to do that to his own allies, then what could he do to his enemies? And if he was here personally in Karakura, then it must be an integral part of Aizen's plans. So you two must be the operatives Aizen sent to conduct the surveillance, right? Zale stated. Yes sir. I'm Azuki Sano and this is Namejin Naoto. Sano answered with a bow. We were told by Aizen-sama to report directly to you. Here. Ah. So you two are the special operatives who reports directly to Aizen-sama. Excellent. Zale said with a curt nod. Finally some competent replacements so I can leave this dreadfully boring place. Zale pauses before giving both Naoto and Sano a disdainful look. I can trust you two not to mess up any of the devices I have set up in the area to gather data, can I? Of course Zale-sama. We were chosen by Aizen-sama for a reason after all, so you can leave this place to us. Naruto answers, betraying none of the anger he felt. If there was one thing he hated, it was people looking down on him, and Zale was clearly underestimating him. But for the sake of their goals, he would swallow his pride and keep silent. Well, in that case, Zale said as he opens a garganta. Quote ellipsis dot. I shall leave things here in your capable hands. We shall not let you or Aizen-sama down. Sano said as he and Naoto bows at the Espada, who enters the garganta and closes it after him. It was only after Zale leaves that Naruto looks up and scowls. That guy reminds me why I hated Kabuto so much. Naoto growls. Careful what you say, Sano cautioned as he looks at Karakura warily. Shazal did tell us that he's bugged the entire town. No telling what sort of nasty little critters he's got floating around here. Good point, Naoto said with a grimace before a sudden surge of Reiatsu catches their attention. You feel that? Naoto asks his friend. Yeah, it came from somewhere over there, Sano said, pointing down to a certain part of the town. Let's go have a look, shall we? Making sure that they were high enough and that their Reiatsu signet Ure was sufficiently suppressed so they wouldn't be detected. The two Arancars flew towards the source of the disturbance and arrives just in time to witness a gravely injured black-haired female Nigami stab an orange-haired teenager who was protecting her and a couple of other females from a large hollow with her Zanpakuto. Looks like the Shinigami's trying to transfer some of her powers to the kid so he could fight the hollow, Naoto stated. She must be pretty desperate if she's gonna bank on him surviving the process. If he's got the potential, then he's got a shot at survival, Sano said thoughtfully. This must be the reason why Aizen's so interested in this place. There must a lot of people here with potential which he can exploit. But before the two can say anything else, a bright flash of light and another powerful surge of Reiatsu catches their attention. They look back and sees that the Shinigami no longer wore her uniform and was instead dressed in a white kimono associated with ordinary plus souls. The orange-haired teenager, however, was now dressed as a Shinigami, complete with a huge Zanpakuto strapped on his back. Wow, the kid sucked all of the Shinigami's powers, Naoto said in wonder, then smiles widely. He's got the potential for damn sure. This assignment is turning out to be a lot better than I'd hoped for. Yeah, Sasuke agreed as he watches the new Shinigami beat the hollow with a single stroke of his oversized Zanpakuto. We've found our subject, and I'm pretty sure that if we follow him around, interesting things are gonna happen. Ellipsis. For the next few months, Naoto and Sano closely monitored the activities of the orange-haired boy whose name was Kurosaki Ichigo and his Shinigami companion, Kuchiki Rukia. And as they suspected, Karakura had a number of individuals who possessed unique abilities. Surprisingly, most of them were even acquaintances of Kurosaki Ichigo, such as the dark-skinned, hulking boy named Sato who had the power to summon a powerful armored shell over his right arm. Another one was a kindly girl named Inoue Orihime whose hair ornaments had unusual yet formidable abelites. Ryu Ishida was also another albeit somewhat hostile acquaintance of Kurosaki Ichigo whose powers as a Quincy was said to be more dangerous than a Shinigami's to a hollow. Kurosaki Ichigo's own father Isshin also seemed to possess great powers early suppressed for some reason. The occupants of a small store which included a small black cat, two kids, a massive man wearing glasses and the goofy-looking owner wearing a bucket hat, named Urahara Kazuki, also had powers which they kept suppressed, though Sano and Naoto weren't too eager to find out why, since they had a feeling that it would be the worst mistake they could ever make in their new afterlives. But then again, it might also be a good idea to gather info on them just in case they decide to recruit allies from outside Hueco Mundo. Things were relatively uneventful for the two Arrancars until one day. Ellipsis. What going on? Sano mutters watching hollows appear all around the area. Why the hell are all these hollows coming out of the woodwork all of a sudden? Somio. Ne used some sort of powerful lure to attract them all here. Naoto said, sniffing the air with a frown. I think I found the ones responsible. Sasuke said, pointing towards a spot in town where the hollows were gathering only to be destroyed by flashes of light and steel. The two Arrancars moves closer to investigate. The Shinigami and the Quincy. Naoto comments with a raised eyebrow. It looks like they're having some sort of competition to see who kills the most hollows, though this is a dangerous game they're playing. What stupid fools, Sano growls, even though it may be easy to defeat all these weak hollows. They're risking a lot of lives by purposely attracting them here. A sound above catches their attention, causing both to look up. They look up and sees a large, familiar looking black shroud wearing a white mask with a pointed nose. Damn, guess I was wrong, Sano amended. Looks like things are about to get harder for them. A Manos Grande. Are they even ready for that? Naoto asks and almost makes a move to help them out. Fortunately, Sano was able to hold him back. We can't interfere, Naoto. We'd be attracting too much attention to ourselves. Sano said, then looks at the Shinigami and the Quincy. Let's see how things play out here first. It'd be interesting to see how they handle an enemy like this. Fortunately, Kurosaki and Ryu had managed to put aside the IR differences long enough to team up and defeat the Manos Grande. But even after they went their separate ways, the Arrancars were still in the area discussing the ramifications of this latest fiasco. This is exactly what we don't need. Because of what those two pulled, this place is probably gonna be crawling with Shinigamis pretty soon. Sano grumbles. Not much we can do about that now. We Ed to contact Los Noches for further orders. Naoto said, after this incident, I've got a feeling that our assignment's gonna be cut short. I agree, Sano said, then looks at the spot where the Shinigami and the Quincy had stood their ground. Mark my words, Naoto. Those two have stirred up a hornet's nest and they're about to get stung. There's bound to be trouble here real soon. Ellipsis. Sano's words proved prophetic, as none long after, two Shinigamis came to the real world with one objective in mind. The capture of Kuchiki Rukia. But the ones sent to bring Kuchiki Rukia back to Soul Society were no ordinary Shinigamis. They were ranking members of the Gote 13 who identified themselves as Captain Kuchiki Byakuya and Lieutenant Abarai Renji of the 6th Division. The two Arrancars arrives just in time to see Kurosaki battle with the Lieutenant Abarai Renji, who had the early advantage. But fueled by his need to protect Rukia, Ichigo slowly began to overpower the 6th Division lieutenant. But their battle was interrupted by the 6th Division captain, who stepped in and disabled Ichigo with one swift stroke. In the end, rather than see her friend be harmed further, the one called Kuk Hiki Rukia chose to voluntarily go with the 6th Division officers. As expected of a Gote 13 captain. Whatever the hell he did, it dropped Kurosaki's spiritual pressure down to almost nothing. It's as if he never became a Shinigami in the first place. Sano stated. Too bad. He had promise. I don't know, Sano, Naoto said doubtfully as he watches the stricken Ichigo struggle to crawl towards Rukia. He shouldn't even be able to move after taking that kind of damage, but he still is. The guy's got some guts. That's true, Sano said thoughtfully, but guts can only take you so far. He two Arrancars continued to watch as the 6th Division officers took Rukia through a portal which will undoubtedly take them to Soul Society. Ichigo, on the other hand, had lost consciousness due to loss of blonde or the sudden shortage of spiritual powers. After making sure that there were no other individuals with any sort of spiritual awareness in the immediate vicinity, Naoto and Sano goes down to check on Ichigo. Sano kneels down and studies Ichigo before shaking his head and gets back up to his feet. That attack by the 6th Division captain severed his soul sleep and soul chain. He has most likely lost his abilities as a Shinigami, Sano said solemnly, and the captain said his name was Kuchiki Byakuya, which means he's somehow related to the girl. Makes you kinda wonder what horde of people would send their own blood after you and why he or she would agree to capture you in the first place. Naruto looks down at Ichigo with a touch of sadness and clenches his fist tightly. Damn it, it's not fair. It's not as if he asked to be a Shinigami. And under the circumstances, Kuchiki Rukia had no option but to transfer her powers to Ichigo or else he and his family would have died. Why the hell is Soul Society prosecuting her for that? Sano shrugs his shoulders. Your guess is as good as mine. But for now we have to get this guy some serious help and I don't ordinary medicine is gonna help him. Naoto looks down at Ichigo as he thought for a moment before an idea hits him. I think I may know a place where we could take him. It's a long shot but it's the only option we have for now. Ellipsis. Ding dong. All right, I'm coming. Urahara stated lightly as he walks towards the front door of his small store. He opens the door and much to his surprise, finds the battered and bloody form of Kurosaki Ichigo. Kurosaki-san, what in the world happened to you? The ex-12th Division captain said, using what little medical knowledge he knew to scan him before calling out to his assistants. Tessai, Junpei, I need some help out here. Ururu, try to contact Yoruichi and prepare the emergency kit for Shinigamis. The burly Tessai and the diminutive Junpei rushes OU. T from the back of the store and sees Ichigo. Isn't that Kurosaki-san? Tessai inquires as he checks over the orange-haired Shinigami. Damn, how'd he get here and how'd he get messed up so badly? Unpei asks as he helps Tessai bring Ichigo to the spare room. My guess is that somebody brought him here. Urahara answers as he glances outside with a frown. It was faint but there was a spiritual trace of a fairly powerful beings in the vicinity. He suspected that they were the ones who brought Ichigo to his doorstep since the orange-haired boy seemed incapacitated for the moment. He glances at Tessai who gives him an uncharacteristically serious look indicating that he too sensed the powerful beings. In any case, we'll figure out who brought him to us later. Right now we need to bring Kurosaki-san inside ASAP. We have a lot of work to do. Urahara stated taking one last look outside before following his employees into the store. Ellipsis. I knew there's something funny about that store. The and that big guy are probably ex-Shinigami officers and high-ranking ones at that, Naoto said as he and Sano watched and listened from a fair distance away. Yeah, they might have also sensed our presence judging from the way they're looking around like that, which is not easy at all with almost all our powers sealed up like this. Those two are definitely strong and dangerous, Sano said thoughtfully. In any case, I think we've done just about all we can here. Yeah, if those 6th Division officers who came to retrieve Kuchiki-san is any indication, I think it's a ball scarce. Naoto agreed. We can't have anyone else find out we've been snooping around. Sano then opens a garganta and after taking one last look around them, the two Arankars steps into the portal going back to Hueco Mundo. Naoto and Sano were walking through the halls of Las Noches after delivering their findings to Aizen. For obvious reasons, they didn't mention how they brought the wounded Kurosaki Ichigo to the shop of Urahara Kazuki for help. The rogue Shinigami quietly listened to their reports and had thanked them for their excellent work before dismissing them. So now, the two were on their way to their usual spot out in the deserts of Hueco Mundo to discuss their next moves as well as a quick training session when someone calls out to them. Naoto. Sano. Do you have a moment? The two Arankars looks back and sees Hallibal standing behind them with her fractions. Naoto and Sano were introduced to the current Tricera Espada by Stark after they established their alliance and rarely spoke to the mysterious dark-skinned, blonde-haired woman, but both had encountered and spoken to her fractions on more than one occasion and got along with them well enough. And from what they had heard from the 3 female fractions, Hallibal seemed like an honest, decent and honorable person. But she was also not the sort of person you'd want as your enemy either if her spiritual pressure was any indication. Hallibal-sama. Both Arankars greeted with a bow before Naoto asks, is there anything we can do for you? Stark asked me to pass along a message to you because he had to go on a mission. I talk it that you are on your way out to the desert. The Espada asks, yes ma'am, we thought we'd get some training done to pass the time. Sano answered, we are on our way out as well. We will walk with you to the gates of Las Noches. Hallibal said as she turns and starts walking. As the contingent was moving towards their destination, Mila Rose starts a conversation. "We heard you two had a mission to the real world. So how'd it go?" The Amazonian Arrancar asks. Very briefly, the two narrated their venture into Karakura town, including the incident where the hollows were lured into the center of the town for Ishida and Ichigo's little contest, as well as the retrieval of Kuchiki Rukia by Soul Society. That idiotic Quincy and Shinigami. They're lucky they only interacted a week Manos. And why thing higher than that and they would have been dead. Apache spat contemptuously. That's true. But despite their blunder, they did a pretty good job wiping out those hollows. Naoto said, while I agree with Apache that the luring of hollows for their masochistic little game was an ill-advised act, something about Kuchiki Rukia's retrieval seems odd to me. Sun said thoughtfully, what's so odd about it? The official Shinigami of the area screwed up while doing her job, so now they're giving her the boot. Mila Rose stated, crossing her arms over her chest. It's not that simple, Mila Rose. Both officers sent were close acquaintances of Kuchiki Rukia and both seems to hold a lot of contempt for her despite their affiliations. Sano said, Sano is right, to send such a high-ranking office. RS of the Gote 13 who also happens to be a kin and a close acquaintance for her capture is too much of a coincidence. Sun said, and from how Naoto-san and Sano-san described the incident, it was almost as if what she did was a heinous act which only deserved capital punishment. Since when is an action born out of desperation considered a serious crime? It's not supposed to be one. Apache said with a derisive snort. But then again, these are Shinigamis we're talking about here. They've got their own rules and do things differently from us. Apache is right. Hannibal cuts in quietly. Every society has their own ideas of proper etiquette and behavior, and the Shinigamis just happen to think that the lending of their powers to a human under any circumstance is unacceptable and illegal. But that doesn't necessarily mean that our ways are any better. It really depends on an individual's point of view though. Sano reflected. Some things that we may do may seem unethical to others yet is perfectly acceptable to us. Quote, so the question now is, who decides on what is considered as proper behavior for an entire society? Naoto asks. Hannibal shakes her head at this and states, you know what, we can argue about this for centuries and still not find an answer. But the important thing now is that we're all striving for one thing, and that is the general welfare of our kind. We simply cannot allow others with personal agendas to interfere with our goals. In any case, we're getting off topic here. Hannibal said as she, her fractions and the two masked Arrancars stops at the gates of Las Noches. Stark wanted me to tell you that should you ever venture out into the deserts of Hueco Mundo again, it's your turn to patrol for insurgents. Naoto and Sano looks at each other upon hearing this. The coded message basically meant that Stark was asking them to find the former Tricera Espada Nelliel. Along with Stark and sometime Hannibal, they had discussed the possibility that Nelliel was still alive somewhere in the deserts of Hueco Mundo after her sudden disappearance from Las Noches. They were guessing that the former Tricera and her fractions were attacked, injured and subsequently forced out into the deserts of Hueco Mundo by one or two other Espadas and hadn't been seen since. But now, Stark wanted them to find her, which meant that the Primera was starting to consolidate his forces and making his move. It'll be like finding the proverbial needle in the haystack. Naoto mutters. That may be true, but we are confident that the two of you are more than suited for the task. Hannibal said. We will do our best, Hannibal-sama. Sano said before Naoto could comment any further. Excellent. Then we will take our leave. Hannibal said before using Sonido to disappear. Happy hunting, boys. Mila Rose said before following Hannibal using Sonido. Sucks to be you guys, but good luck anyways. Apache said, waving goodbye as she also disappears. For her part, Sun merely bows politely before following the Espada and her fellow fractions and leaving the two Arrancar by themselves. I guess we better get going too, Naruto said after a moment of silence. Yeah, I've got a lot of sand to cover on a limited timetable. Sano said as both he and Naoto disappears into the desert. Urahara Shoten. Ichigo groans out loudly as he opens his eyes and looks around, wondering where he was. Ah, I see you're awake now, Kurosaki-kun. An annoyingly cheerful and familiar sounding voice said to him. The orange-haired Shinigami looks over and sees the store owner Urahara sitting beside his bed. His face hidden by his ever-present fan. You had us worried for a moment, but I'm glad you're all right. Urahara-san, where am I? What happened to me? Ichigo asks as he looks at the bandages he had all over his body. You're in the back of my store, young man. I found you nearly dead at my doorstep. Urahara said. As for what happened to you, I was hoping that you'd enlighten me on how you got hurt so badly. I don't. Ichigo starts before his eyes widens. Rukia, where's Rukia? He said as he starts to get back to his feet. But a searing pain makes him think twice. Whoa there, Kurosaki-san. Take it easy for a bit and tell me exactly what happened from the very beginning. Urahara said. So that's what Ichigo did. He narrated his encounter with the 6th Division captain and his lieutenant as they were attempting to bring Kuchiki Rukia back with them, and how he had fought with the lieutenant on equal terms for a while before the captain stepped in and disabled him. You encountered and picked a fight with officers of the Gote 13 and you actually survived. Urahara asks incredulously. Yeah, and I would have beaten that lieutenant if that captain didn't attack me like he did. Ichigo groused. You're an even bigger fool than I thought if you actually believe what you're saying now. BRCE spoke out. Ichigo looks around in anger but couldn't seem to find the source of the voice. Who the hell are you? And why don't you tell me that face to face? I'm down here, brat. The voice said again. Ichigo looks over the edge of his bed and finds a small black cat sitting on its haunches and staring at him. And I'll say it as many times as you like. You're an idiot if you think you could actually beat an officer of the Gote 13 that easily. Ichigo blinks in confusion and looks at Urahara. Is it my imagination, or did I just see and hear this cat talk to me? It's not a dream, brat. You just heard me talk to you. The black cat said gruffly. Why, yeah, well, who asked for your opinion? Ichigo said as he slowly regained his composure and deciding that weirdness was a norm here in Urahara's shop. What does a furball like you know about Shinigamis anyways? Ichigo instantly regretted his words as a powerful spiritual pressure which seems to emanate from the cat flattens him like a ton of bricks. Brat, you couldn't even learn a fraction of what I know even if you had 100 years to learn it from me. And frankly speaking, I don't have the time nor the patience to teach it to a brat like you. Now, let's all not get carried away here. Urahara cuts in, looking at the black cat who nods and eases up on the spiritual pressure. Perhaps an introduction is in order. Ichigo, this cat is Yoruichi, who is one of my business partners. He is aware of Shinigamis, so he knows what he's talking about. And what he said is true. You can't easily beat an officer of the Gote 13. You're lucky to even be alive. What are you talking about? Ichigo asks in a much more subdued tone of voice. Very good. At least you're now starting to listen. Yoruichi grumbles, then starts to explain. To prevent affecting the spirits of the real world in an adverse way from exposure to their spiritual pressure, all captain-class Shinigamis need to have roughly 80 powers sealed away, which means when you were fighting the lieutenant, he was fighting at only 1/5 of his real powers. Had he been fighting at full strength, you would have been dead in an instant. Hell, you're extremely lucky to survive an encounter with a captain like Kuchiki Byakuya and live to tell about it. Ichigo was silent for a moment before saying, then what am I lying around here for? If I want to get much stronger, I need to start training now so I can. That's another thing, Ichigo. Urahara interrupts. When Captain Kuchiki struck you down, he didn't just injure you. He severed the source of your spiritual powers as well, so now, you've lost almost all your abilities as a Shinigami. Ichigo looked dumbstruck as the full implications of the situation hit him. After a few moments, he finally spoke. Isn't there any way I can get them back? Urahara looked a little reluctant, but a nod from Yoruichi prompts him to speak. Well, there is a method for you to regain your powers. But it's an exceedingly dangerous method because, if you fail, you will surely die. Would you be willing to go through the ordeal? I swore to Rukia that I would risk everything to save her. What kind of man would I be if I can't keep my promise? Ichigo said. Hee, you're still an idiot kid, but I like your determination, brat. Yoruichi said with a chuckle. If you're gonna do this, then rest up. You're gonna need every last bit of your strength to survive what's about to come. After leaving Ichigo so he could sleep, Urahara and Yoruichi goes back to the front of the store to talk. I saw the ones who left Ichigo here at your doorstep. And you're not gonna believe who it was. Yoruichi said without preamble. Oh really? Try me, Urahara said. Yoruichi takes a deep breath and braces for Urahara's inevitable reaction before continuing. Arancars. Hueco Mundo. As I've said before, Sano. A needle in the haystack. Naoto grumbles as both he and Sano appears on top of a sand dune. Stop complaining, Naoto, Sano said in an annoyed tone of voice. As much as he liked his friend, his impatient nature sometimes grated on his nerves. We haven't even gone that far yet. Well yeah, but you know as well as I do how big this desert is, right? Naoto stated. And you know, the odds of us finding one specific hollow. What if this is all a wild goose chase, huh? Sano was about to retort when his sharp eyes sees something. Hey, do you see that? Sano asks his friend, Poi. Nting at a moving cloud of sand a fair distance away. Yeah, I see it, Naoto confirms. Let's go see what's going on. Maybe we'll get a clue on where to find our target. The two Arancars then uses S. Onido to quickly travel from their location to the area where they saw the sand cloud. They arrive and finds one of the oddest sight they could ever encounter. A little, green-haired little girl wearing a ragged cloak which obscured her tiny form was being chased by three hollows. A thin one with an ant-like head wearing a loincloth, a short chunky one who looked like a walking tiki mask, and a large worm-like hollow. And the weird part about it was the girl was laughing her heart out as if her current predicament was just some sort of game to her. How the hell did a kid like that get to Hueco Mundo? And why does she look like she's having fun being chased around like that too? Boot. Naoto wondered aloud. Let's worry about the details later, Sano said. Right now we need to give her a hand. In a blur of speed, the two Arancars disappears then reappears between the little girl and the hollows chasing her. Alright fellas, that's far enough. You guys better Santo. Whoa, Naruto started to say before the worm-like hollow lunges at the two without warning, causing them both to jump back. What do you guys think you're doing? Sano demanded before blocking a spiked club which the walking tiki mask had pulled out from his mouth. Sano, Naoto calls out but had to jump back to avoid an attack by the ant-headed hollow who moments before had brought out what seemed to be a Zanpakuto from inside his loincloth, which had a blade made of energy as well as a creepy phallus-shaped hilt. What the Jillians with Zanpakutos? Naoto thought in surprise. No, these two knows how to use them, which means they're actually Arancars. Quote, you won't get your hands on her, you filth. We won't allow it. The ant-headed hollow hissed in anger as he continued to attack Naoto, who blocks his attacks with his own weapon. A shadow suddenly looms above him and Naoto looks up in time to see the worm-like hollow trying to smother him. Reacting quickly, Naoto kicks away the ant-headed Arancar and uses the mace of his weapon to send the huge worm-like hollow flying back several feet and finally landing on the sand unconscious. Bawa bawa, the walking tiki mask cries out. Sano uses the opportunity to kick him away, then jumps back to stand by Naoto's side. Stop right now and identify yourselves, Sano demands, watching their opponents regain their bearings. You won't get a second warning. This is the only answer you're getting from us! Quote. The ant-headed hollow shot back as he jumps on top of the walking tiki mask and crosses his arms in front of him. The walking tiki mask opens his mouth wide and soon, energy starts to gather in front of the two hollows. Uh-oh, they're charging up a Sero and it's a big one, Naoto said as he prepares himself. Yeah, but that thing looks a little unstable though, Sano stated thoughtfully. Eat this, Sero Syncretico. The huge ball of swirling energy shoots towards Naoto and Sano, who stood waiting. Just before the ball hits them, it separates into two separate balls which flies past them and explodes harmlessly away from them. What? How did they? The ant-headed hollow didn't get a chance to finish his statement as Naoto and Sano knocks both him and his companion on their back and stands over them with a foot on their opponent's chests and a charged Sero hovering near their face. Phew. That was some Sero you pulled out of nowhere there, Naoto said to the ant-headed hollow he was pinning down with his feet. But it had to f's obviously a last-ditch move on your part, so it takes a lot out you, so if you miss, it's game over. And as powerful as it may seem, that attack is still a combination of two Seros, and that's where its second flaw lies. If it's not fully synchronized, all it takes is a little pressure along the stress lines and it will separate again into two Seros. Sano said emotionlessly, his own foot on the walking tiki mask. I told you before that you won't get a second warning, and you blew your only chance at survival by attacking us. Naoto's grin grew wider as his Sero got visibly bigger. Thanks for giving us the excuse, guys. Now, wait, please stop that. A tiny voice calls out. Naoto and Sano Lu KS back and sees the small girl the hollows were chasing running towards them. What are you still doing here, kid? Get out of here. These things are dangerous. Naoto calls out, but the girl kept on running towards them and in the process trips on her cloak and exposes her head, which had been partially hidden. On top of her head was a cracked, cartoonish-looking skull. That kid's an Arrancar too, Sano said in confusion. The girl then picks herself up from the ground, looks at them, then starts to cry. Why are you being mean to Nell's F-Vens? Please don't hurt them. We were just weighing games. The Arrancar girl who identified herself as Nell cried. Sano and Naoto seemed at a loss on what to do. The girl was now clearly a friend of the two Arrancars who attacked them. But then again, they couldn't just let them go because they'd get attacked again. You're in danger, Nelliel-sama. Please run away. The ant-headed Arrancar calls out, prompting Naoto and Sano to look at him in surprise. Wait a sec here. Did you just call her Nelliel? As in Nelliel to Oderschwank? Sano asks tightly. It was the walking tiki mask who answered. Yeah, she's Nelliel, the one you're ordered to hunt down and kill. Doncha, no. Quiet, you fool. The ant-headed Arrancar growls at his companion. Naoto and Sano looks at the quivering child behind them again. That's Nelliel to Oderschwank. Naoto asks in confusion before the two Arrancars looks at each other with the same thought in their head. We're in deep shit. 7 pairs of eyes looks down on the sleeping chibified form of the ex-Trasera Espada. So this really is. Hannibal started, looking at Naoto and Sano quizzically. Yeah, unfortunately, this kid is really her. Naoto confirms with a nod. Deciding that it was too risky to Saint waltz through the front door with their visitors, Naoto and Sano uses the underground caverns beneath Las Noches to smuggle in the former Trasera and her fractions and meets with Stark, Hannibal and her fractions in one of the many empty chambers there. You've got to be kidding me. You're telling me that this little runt is actually Nelliel too, Apache exclaims, looking at the two masked Arrancars to see if they were trying to pull a fast one on her. But their nod spoke volumes and confirms the Fraxians' worst fears. Which means, we're pretty much screwed then. Mila Rose summed it up bluntly as she crosses her arms and shakes her head. Please don't say that, Mila Rose. That's by no means a certainty. Sun stated quietly. Sun is right, Sano seconded. No matter how she looks now, this kid is the former Trasera Espada. She somehow just lacks the means or motivation to access her powers. This has turned out to be quite a troublesome predicament we're in, Stark said, with a sigh before looking over at the ant-headed Hollow and the walking tiki mask. The two unusual-looking Arrancars whose names were Pesci and Dondochaka had been the former Trasera's fractions. After convincing them that they meant no harm, the two had narrated the events which led to their self-imposed exile to the deserts of Hueco Mundo and pointed to the current Quinta Espada Noitora Gir. UGA and the current Octava Espada Shazal Aporo Grants as the masterminds. If those two unlikely allies were willing to work together to dispose of a fellow Espada, then that made them threats to be wary of. Neutra has always been envious and resentful of Nelliel-sama. He's made no secret his belief that females are inferior and therefore unworthy of becoming an Espada, so when he was beaten but spared by her in a fight, he took it as an insult and has never forgiven her for it. Pesci stated. That's why he for Shazal's help back then. Neutra knew he couldn't beat Nelliel-sama, he teamed up with Shazal and surprised us. Doncha no. Dondochaka adds. What a damned chauvinistic pig. Apache growls. Neutra didn't have the cojones to do the job himself, so he teamed up with that pink-haired Fruit Loop Shazal. Typical of that cowardly bastard. If he was able to do that to Nelliel, then there's a chance he might pull the same stunt on Hannibal-sama. Mila Rose stated. We've gotta tch ourselves around those two pricks then. I don't think that Neutra will make an attempt on Hannibal-sama though. Sun said passively. I believe that his alliance with Shazels is a one-time deal born out of convenience, and I highly doubt that Shazel would risk compromising his own position, especially since Aizen has forbidden any conflicts between Espadas. If Neutra does have any plans of attacking Hannibal-sama, then he will have to do it on his own, and we all know that she can easily destroy him if he tries. Be that as it may, both Shazel and Neutra cannot be underestimated. Hannibal stated. They wouldn't be in the Espada if they were that weak. I agree with Hannibal-sama. Naoto said. As it is, those two don't operate on a full deck, so I sure as hell ain't turning my back on those conniving, treacherous sons of bitches anytime soon. Alright, now that we've established that we've gotta keep our eyes on those two bastards, what's our next step? Sano asks before looking at Nell and company. I think it's pretty obvious that we can't rely on Nelliel at this point, so we have to make other plans. That's maybe true, Sano, but we can't leave Nelliel in this condition either. Stark said somberly. She deserves better than this, so we have to exhaust all means to find a way to change her back to her original form. Before anyone can speak up, what sounded like a mournful bugle echoes throughout Las Noches, indicating that there was going to be a meeting of Espadas and their fractions. Since Sano and Naoto reported directly to Aizen, they were also technically Rachan class and attended the meetings as well. What a time for Aizen-sama to call a meeting. Naoto gripes. Now, what do we do with Nelliel-sama and her fractions? They will have to stay down here for the meantime. Hannibal answered, glancing at Pesci and Dondochaka. From what you two described, these two should be able to protect Nelliel from any danger, and this place is isolated enough that it will not be discovered easily. We can just provide them with whatever provisions they require. Stark turns to the ex-Tracera and her fractions and asks, is that acceptable to you? The on-e called Pesci bows his head gratefully. Yes, it is. We're grateful that you've provided us a Nelliel-sama sanctuary despite the danger to yourselves. Nelliel is a valued comrade. There is nothing to thank us for because we are simply righting a wrong, Hannibal stated before turning to her fellow Espada. We should probably get going. Someone will get suspicious if we take too long. Troublesome. But I guess you're right. I'll go on ahead and pick up Lynette for the meeting, Stark said with a sigh before using Sonito to disappear. We will leave for the meeting as well. Hannibal said, no, DDING towards her fractions before they too disappear via Sonito. We'll drop by from time to time to check on you, so be sure to keep Nelliel-sama safe, okay? Sano said to Pesci and Dondochaka. Of course, we are willing to give our very lives for Nelliel-sama if necessary, Doncha, no. Dondochaka declared, thumping a fist to his chest. Ma, let's hope it doesn't come down to that. Naoto aid before getting down on a knee in front of the sleepogis for scaring you before Nelliel-sama. But like we said, we mean you no harm. We will do everything we can to help you get your real form back. Believe it. Naoto gets back up to his feet and nods at Sano before both blurs away via Sonito. You think we can trust them, Pesci? Dondochaka asks his longtime friend and comrade. They've had plenty of opportunity to dispose of us and yet they didn't, Pesci said. I believe they are being sincere and we should be thankful that we are given this opportunity to redeem ourselves. We owe that much to Nelliel-sama, Pesci stated before his visible eye flashed dangerously. Quote ellipsis dot. And to Neutra and Shazel. Sano woke up with a start in his quarters. His skin beaded in sweat from the nightmare he had. And who can blame him? Aizen's master plan was enough to give any sane person bad dreams. The traitorous Shinigami had revealed that he was close to acquiring an artifact called the Hawk, which had the ability to break the boundaries between Hollows and Shinigamis and would be used to create new and more powerful Arankars. And both he and Naoto were told that they would be going with Aizen to Soul Society and assist him in acquiring the Hogokyu. He also revealed his plan of invading the realm of the Spirit King in order to overthrow him and take his place. But in order to do that, he needed the artifact called the King's Key. Aizen had discovered a method for recreating the artifact, but for that, he needed a reishi-rich stretch of land and the sacrifice of over 100,000 souls. Of course, Aizen had the perfect sacrifice. The entire town of Karakura. You are still worried about Aizen's plan. A voice beside Sano stated rather than asked. The masked Arrancar looks over and sees the concerned, pale, purple eyes of Sun Sun looking back at him as she sat up and used the blanket to cover her otherwise naked body. Sano had to smile at the long-haired fraction of Hannibal. Their affair only started about a few months before, but their relationship was born more out of needs rather than love and therefore held no commitments. Even still, their mutual attractio and to each other kept drawing them together during the cold nights of Hueco Mundo. Of course I'm worried, Sano grated, his words sounding more harsh than he actually intended. Aizen wants both me and Naoto to help him steal something which will be used to create more powerful Arrancars who are almost guaranteed to be loyal to him, which would in turn make our job that much harder. Add the fact he plans to annihilate an entire town to create an artificial king's key. We're talking about 100,000 lives here. Even it's supposedly for the good of Hollows, what Aizen's suggesting genocide, and I can't be a part of that. No sane person would want to commit wholesale murder. But then again, I never said Aizen was ever in his right mind to begin with. Now, did I? Sun Sun said, as she wrapped her arms around Sano and pressed herself to his broad back. It's not like you to worry this way, Sano. I am confident that you and Naoto will be able to play your parts well. You know we will be watching Aizen's every move, and once he makes a mistake, we will use the opportunity to strike, and that will be the end of that. Sano quirked an eyebrow as he looks at Sun Sun. You know something. That simplistic way of thinking makes you more like Apache and Mila Rose than you'd care to admit. Sun Sun scoffs at this. Oh please. I am nothing like those two. I simply prefer to eliminate the root of the problem and not just flail around uselessly like them. Sun Sun smiles as she pushes Sano back down to the bed. Besides, can those two do the things I do to you? A searing kiss later, Sano decides that three fraction of Hannibal might not be so alike after all. He briefly wondered how his friend was coping before giving in to Sun Sun's skillful ministrations. Chiruchi thunned, or which has been called a lot of things in her lifetime. But patient was not one of them. As a matter of fact, her violent temper was relatively well known, and many unfortunate Arrancars can attest to that fact where they were still alive. Only a few beings has survived her tantrums so far, and one of them was the current target of her ire. A vein appears on Chiruchi's forehead as shook Naoto. Naoto, wake up. The vein in Chiruchi's forehead grew larger as she shook Naruto harder. Oi, wake up, I said. Naoto, I know you're faking. Chiruchi warned. I swear, if you don't wake up right now, I'll. The vein on Chiruchi's forehead grew gigantic as she retrieved her Zanpakuto by the bedside. Rip off. Gall. All right. I'm awake, Chiruchi. Naoto sat up abruptly with a laugh, his arms in front of him for defense. Geez, no need to bust out your resurrection on me. Chiruchi huffed in annoyance as she looks away. The Tricer, Espada Hannibal, was the one who recruited her for the secret campaign against Aizen. Chiruchi was only too eager to accept, since Aizen was the reason why she was demoted to a private Espada in the first place. And it was through Hannibal that she met the enigmatic Namejan Naoto. At first, Chiruchi hated the blonde masked Arrancar. Naoto's casual, flippant nature irritated her, and his kind, sincere ways seemed too good to be true. And yet in the end, these were the traits which endeared him to the Privern, which ultimately made her decide to take him as her lover. It also helped that Naoto cool pleased her like no other and had lots of stamina to spare for a lowly numero, which led her to believe that he was much stronger than he was letting on. Maybe even stronger than her. So exactly what are you gonna do about this new wrinkle, Aizen? Through your way, Chiruchi asks as she rested her head on her lover's chest. The way I see things, it seems like that bastard has something on you and Sano. I agree, Naoto said, stroking Chiruchi's hair absently. He's obviously trying to test our loyalty, cause he doesn't really like the idea of having Arrancar of our caliber who's not totally under his thumb. We'll have continue playing the role of his obedient subordinates a while longer and hopefully undermine some his efforts in the process. Naoto then looks at Chiruchi as his tone becomes serious. I am worried about you and the other Privern though. I mean, you are former Espadas who's looking to get back your position of power by whatever means necessary, so if anything goes wrong, you'd most likely take the blame. Don't worry about me and the other's lover boy. We can take care of ourselves just fine. Chiruchi said. Besides, thanks to you and Sano, we've also found a way to access our real powers and not just the pathetic private abilities we were saddled with when we were demoted by Aizen, just in case things go bad. Hopefully, things won't go bad if all goes according to plan. Naoto said. But on the other hand, some small part of me wants things to go wrong, so we'll have every excuse in the world to take out Aizen. Now, Chiruchi swats the back of Naruto's head. Idiot. While it's obvious that you and Sano much stronger than any Numero or Fraction I know, you two are still not good enough to beat someone like Aizen. Hell, I doubt you're even good to beat me. As th. At a challenge I hear Chiruchi Thunderwitch. Naoto asks with a grin. You can take it however you want. Chiruchi answers with a seductive little smile. Well, that's a challenge I'll be more than glad to take up. Naoto said with a wide smile, rolling on top of Chiruchi and making the Privern shriek in delight. A few moments later, all that was heard from the two were moans and groans. Tonight, they would make love. But tomorrow, their war would finally begin. Deep within Seraiti and inside what seems to be a large chamber, a garganta opens and stepping out of the portal was Aizen, Naoto and Sano. Gentlemen, welcome to Soul Society, Aizen said, gesturing around him. And yet despite the light greeting of welcome from their leader, the sight which greets Naoto and Sano was anything but welcome. In a chamber full of dead people seated around a large table. And from what Naoto and Sano could determine at first glance, the occupants of the room had been murdered and had been dead for quite some time. What the hell happened here? It looks like someone decided to start the party without us. Naoto said lightly, though a small frown can be seen from beneath his mask. The blonde Arankar S. Till had to keep appearances in front of Aizen, though it was difficult not to react strongly at the sight of such carnage. Some party this is, Sano muttered with distaste as he looked around. They didn't even bother cleaning up their own mess. The blood-splattered chamber so strongly reminded Sano of his own past that it wasn't amusing anymore. It was only through sheer force of will that he was able to conceal his rage. That would be a wasted effort since hardly anyone ever comes in here. And even if someone did, an empty chamber would raise just as much attention as this room full of dead. Aizen stated cryptically. Welcome back, Aizen Taiko. A voice greets. A pair of figures steps out from the darkness. One was a white-haired man with fox-like features and a malicious grin on his face, while the other was a dark-skinned man wearing an orange scarf and visors. Both men were wearing the white haori of captain-class Shinagamis. Instantly, Naoto and Sano were in front of Aizen and were about to attack when Aizen's voice stops them. Stand down, Naoto, Sano. These two are not our enemies. Aizen commanded, causing both Arankars to visibly relax. My, such vicious attack dogs you brought back here, Aizen. Taiko. The fox-faced man drawled with the infuriating smile still on his face. A smile which reminded Naoto of Kyubi at its most malevolent, which caused him to instantly dislike the man. Who are you callin' a dog, ya, freak? Naoto snarled, which only caused the fox-faced man to smile wider. You've got some nerve to call me that in my face. Hey, feisty too, can I play with him? He adds as he fingers his Zanpakuto, causing Naoto to grip his Rochin tighter. Enough, Aizen said, causing both men to loosen their grips on their weapons. Naoto, Sano, these two are my associates here in Soul Society. 3rd Division Captain Ichimaru Jin and 9th Division Captain Konami Tusen. Are you two the ones responsible for this? Sano asks, tilting his head towards the dead bodies. Not that I'm complaining or anything, but couldn't we have been able to find some use for them? This is a terrible waste of resources. An excellent point. Unfortunately, they offer nothing of value to our cause, and leaving them alive would no doubt cause us problems. The one called Tusen replied. The way the man tilted his head and turned towards him led Sano to believe that Tusen had some sort of vision impairment. Though that didn't make him any less dangerous. They killed the ruling council on my orders. Aizen said. It was a necessary part of my plan, and like Tusen said, they really aren't that much use to us alive. The two Arankars wisely kept their opinions to themselves lest Aizen becomes suspicious of them. But that aside, I'm sure you're wondering why I brought the two of you here in the heart of enemy territory. Aizen's smile was creepy to say the least, and the fact that Naoto and Sano were in a place where everyone with a weapon was out for their heads didn't make the two feel any better. When neither Naoto or Sano answered, Aizen continued. I want the two of you to test Soul Society's defenses for any weaknesses and give me your reports when we go back to Hueco Mundo. Given your abilities and success thus far, you are extremely suited for this task. Just don't allow yourself to be seen while on your mission. We don't want to reveal our true strength just yet. I will be expecting you two at the execution grounds in a few weeks' time. I trust you know where it is from the briefing we gave you. Of course, Aizen-sama, Sano replied with a curt bow. Don't worry, Aizen-sama, we've got this one covered. Naoto added, you can count on us. I know I can, Aizen said with a smile. I'll see you in a week then. Now go. The two Arancars nod and disappears in a burst of sonido. So those two were the ones you were talking about, The ones who survived the Manos forest and became Arancars on their own. They seem pretty reliable, Jin commented with a smile. Yes, they are. They've yet to fail me on any of the tasks I've assigned them. Aizen said, if anything, this mission I gave them will help me determine their dedication to our cause. I am concerned about one thing though. Tucson spoke out. You were right about the fact that they seem to be hiding their true abilities for some unknown reason. But they're definitely much stronger than your average Ajukas. Indeed. But then again, many Arancars act the same way, biding their time and waiting for their opportunity. This makes it easier to manipulate them, Aizen said, glancing at the spot where the two Arancars stood previously. Those two are a few of the more ambitious ones who have the power to back it up even if they don't openly show it. If they pass this little test, I have plans for them. Aizen revealed with a sinister smile. Naoto felt himself involuntarily shiver, almost causing him to stumble in mid-sonido. Luckily, he is able to regain his composure just in time. But his near blunder did not go unnoticed. You all right, Naoto? Sano asks in concern. You almost lost it back there. I'm fine, Naoto assures his longtime friend. It's just that this whole deal stinks. Aizen's up to something when he gave us this mission. I think that's pretty much a given. But something tells me that this is one dirty work we can't afford to fail. Sano said. Think about it, Dobi. He's a captain here and yet he's asking us to test his own home turf for weaknesses. Doesn't that strike you as weird? Realization dawns on Naoto. He's testing us. Naoto snarls. The Tem's freakin' testing us and using us to confirm if his assessment of Soul Society's defense is correct. Yeah, but we couldn't have asked for a better opportunity to gain favor with Aizen. Sano said with a grim smile. If we play our cards right, this could be our ticket straight to the top where we can really do some damage when the time comes for it. I suppose you're right, Naoto said reluctantly, but you know how dirty these kinds of missions can be. Sano gave his friend a non-committal shrug. We've done missions like this before in the past, so it's nothing new. Just bear in mind that this is for the greater good. Yeah, but that doesn't mean I have to like it one bit even if it is for the greater good. Naoto stated grumpily, staring at the landscape beneath them. In any case, let's get this done. We've got a lot of ground to cover. For the next few weeks, Naoto and Sano did as they were told and tested various parts of Soul Society for weaknesses. In their defense as well as the Shinigami's response time to intrusions, which was, suffice to say, severely wanting. During the same period, they also bore witness to the sinister genius that was Sosuke Aizen. How his apparent death threw Soul Society into chaos, sparking a chain of events which ultimately saw fellow Shinigamis drawing their swords against each other. Everything seemed going along smoothly until... No way, it can't be, Naoto whispered. Sano didn't bother to comment. But that was because the raven-haired Arankar was too stunned to speak at who they saw down below. Unmistakable by her pale white eyes was Naoto's beloved during his past life, Hyuga Hinata. Equally unmistakable by her bubblegum pink hair was someone Sano knew very well. Haruno Sakura. Both were wearing black robes and carried the zanpakutos of their enemies, the Shinigami. They're also Shinigamis, Naoto said in disbelief before scowling in anger. I knew we'd see them again sooner or later, but this is too damned soon. Yeah, I agree, and who knows how many more of our old friends we're gonna be running into. Sano stated thoughtfully. This complicado said suddenly in a dead serious tone of voice. It changes everything. Quote, execution grounds 2 weeks later. In her relatively young career as a Shinigami, Hyuga Hinata had seen things she thought she'd never see as a shinobi. Monsters which made even cage-level shinobis cower in fear. Feats of power and strength which dwarfed even the legendary Sannin. And political intrigue and deceit which made the shinobi world's cloak and dagger stuff seem like child's play. But a Shinigami coming back from oblivion was something else altogether. She had been one of the Shinigamis present along with her old friends Haruno Sakura, Nara Shikamaru and Higen Kotetsu, who had seen the corpse of Captain Sosuke Aizen pinned to the wall by his own Zanpakuto with their own eyes. But standing in front of them restrained by no less than the legendary goddess of Flash Shihoun Uruchi and the 2nd Division Captain Soi Fon was the supposedly deceased 5th Division Captain. Only minutes earlier, a message sent out by the vice captain of the 4th Division Kotetsu Azane revealed Aizen's treachery to the Gote 13. He and his cohorts had been responsible for the death of the entire Central 46 and had framed Kuchiki Rukia in the hopes that it would throw them off track. But the Ryoka's invasion had thrown a monkey wrench into that plan, and the one called Kurosaki Ichigo had managed to delay Aizen long enough for the rest of the Gote 13 to arrive and surround them. There is nowhere for you to run anymore, Sosuke Aizen. The Captain General's voice booms out. Surrender. The traitorous captain could only chuckle at this, prompting Uruchi to ask him what was so funny. My apologies. But it's almost time, came the cryptic reply. Before the goddess of Flash could reply, a sudden flash of steel cuts the cloth that was binding Aizen's Zanpakuto and prompts her to jump back to avoid injury. At the same time, something small and hard rams into Soi Fon's stomach and drives her back more surprised than injured. Ah, Naoto, Sano, we are just about to go back home, Aizen said casually as 2 figures in white appear by his side. From what Hinata could tell, they were humanoid in figure who wore white versions of the Shinigami's robes and carried weapons. What distinguished them was their masks, which identified them as some sort of hollows. A huge hole suddenly opens up in the sky, revealing a huge number of Manos Grande. From the hole, rays of light suddenly comes down and engulfs Aizen, the hollows and his cronies. A light which the Captain General had called negation, which was supposedly used by the hollows to rescue their own. But as the traitors and their hollow cohorts disappeared into the hole, Hinata noticed the blonde hollow turn and gaze at her in a meaningful and familiar way. A look which only one other had given her. Naruto-kun. ? Ah, home sweet home, Aizen stated as he steps into his throne room in Las Noches. Trailing behind the former 5th Division captain were his Shinigami cohorts and his Arrancar guards. Well now, the last time I was here in Hueco Mundo, you were just starting to build Las Noches. Jin stated as he looks around. This is quite a setup you've got here, Aizen Taiko. It is an extremely secure location considering where we are. Tucson opined. Soul Society will be hard-pressed to penetrate our defenses if they ever decide to invade us now. I do not believe that will be an issue for a while since they have a lot of other things to attend to, but I thank you for your kind words, Aizen said as he sat on his throne. Now then, gentlemen, you must be weary from our journey here. You may rest for a little bit and take the time to familiarize yourselves with Las Noches. Just be back here later so we may discuss our future plans. Aizen then turns towards Naoto and Sano to address them. Naoto, please show Jin where he'll be staying. Sano, please accompany Konami to his quarters. Yes, Aizen-sama. Both Arrancars replied and led their respective guests in opposite directions towards their quarters. Once they were gone, Aizen gets up from his throne and goes to the center of the room where a small, cylindrical platform rises from the floor. He then takes out the Hogyoku from inside his robe and places it on the platform before turning towards his throne with a smile. Naoto and Sano did an excellent job in Soul Society Ulquiorra. You made the right choice sending those 2 warriors with me. They show much promise, Aizen said. The stoic Quattro Espada steps out from behind the throne and spoke. I am gratified that you recognize their potential, Aizen-sama. This mission just confirms what we have been suspecting all along about their power. But despite all this, I'm fairly sure that their loyalties still lie with you, Aizen-sama. What's certain is that they have their own agenda and I'm curious to know what it is. But let's allow them to reveal their true intentions at their own leisure and we will see where we go from there. Aizen said before adding with a knowing smile. After all, it'd be a shame to waste such talent. Quote ellipsis dot dot. I like what you guys did to the place. Quote ellipsis dot dot quote. Quote ellipsis dot dot. Paint job's a little dull but I guess you don't really have access to the hardware store from here, don't you? Quote ellipsis quote. Quote ellipsis dot dot. What do you do for entertainment around here, anyways? Quote ellipsis quote. Yar yar. Still upset about what I said during our first meeting, Can't say I blame ya. Jin said with a sad sigh. We did get off on the wrong foot didn't we? It's not that Jin-sama. Naoto started to say but was interrupted by the ex-3rd Division captain. Call me Jin or Jin-san if ya have to. Adding Sama to my name sounds a little too stiff. Jin said with a dismissive wave. And you don't really have to lie so you won't upset me cause I know that I do tend to be a bastard. At this point, Naoto was starting to revise his opinion on the white-haired man. Sure, the guy was abrasive, sadistic and creepy as hell. But Naoto also managed to catch a glimpse of his more human side. Unlike Aizen, Jin had people whom he truly cared for. Naoto saw how well Jin treated his lieutenant despite how he manipulated him. And the look that he gave a long-haired, strawberry blonde female Shinigami as they were being rescued by the negation back in Soul Society was unmistakably one of affection and regret. To Naoto, that meant that Ichimaru Jin was not such a lost cause after all, and it also made him wonder about his reason for joining Aizen in his quest for power. I suppose I can relate. I tend to rub people the wrong way too, Naoto admitted. Guess that's the reason I'm in this predicament, Ma, it ain't really so bad. Jin said. Everything happens for a reason. You just gotta find out what your reason for being here is. I suppose, Naruto said before offering his hand with a grin. Maybe it would be for the best if we start over then. Make it easier to work with each other. I'm one of the numberless Arrancar, Namejan Naoto. Nice to meet ya. Jin raises an eyebrow at this and returns the grin as he shook Naoto's hand. One of the numberless Arrancar Well then, the name's Ichimaru Jin. Former captain of the Gote 13's 3rd Division. I'm glad we had this talk Naoto and I think we're gonna get along just fine. Naoto hoped that was true. Both for his own sake and Jin's. As they walked along the corridors of Las Noches, Sano observed the enigma known as Konami Tusen out of the corner of his eye. In the time he and spent observing the events in Soul Society, he noticed that there was something eerily familiar about the way the blind Shinigami acted. The man could preach and spout about justice all he wants, but Sano could read him like an open book and knew that he was truly interested in just one thing. Revenge. A need for revenge so great that it could only come from losing someone precious to you because of unjustified reasons. Sano didn't know what the blind Shinigami had lost and what compelled him to betray his comrades like this. In his opinion, Tusen had everything a man could possess, power which obviously earned him his captain's rank despite his disability. The loyalty, respect and admiration of both peers and subordinates alike. And probably more than a measure of sympathy from people because of his unfortunate predicament. But then again, Sano also had those in Hi's previous life and look where he ended up now. Maybe they weren't so different after all, seeing as their respective losses had somehow unhinged their minds. You have a question, Tusen spoke out, shaking Sano out of his musings. It was eerie how the man seemed to know that he had something in mind. Actually, I'd just like to make an observation if I'm not being too invasive, Tusen-sama. Sano stated, asking relevant questions and speaking your mind is never a crime. And as comrades in arms, it would be unseemly for me to not hear your opinion without a valid reason. You may speak, Tusen said. Sano took a moment to choose his words carefully before speaking. I may be mistaken, but you seem to be someone who has experienced a significant loss in your life. A loss which probably influenced you to leave your home. Tusen tilts his head at Sano, looking more curious rather than upset. How did you come to this conclusion, Azuki-san? You speak as though you've gone through something like that yourself. You could say that, Sano replied, aware that he was about to share something that might possibly give away his real identity if somebody he knew existed here. But then again, Aizen seems like the kind of guy who likes to keep mostly to himself unless there was something which needed his intervention. My entire family was massacred and I was the sole survivor of that incident. Sano started, deciding to give Tucson a version of the truth. I went after the man who killed them all and eventually caught up with him. But then I find out that my family were killed because of some perverted sense of justice. Sano continued, his fist clenching tightly at the emotion of the memory. I see. Then you too have suffered. Tucson murmured. Many people tend to misunderstand the true meaning of justice. That is why that word has always been misused and abused for selfish means. Unfortunately, I'm probably one of those kind of people. Sano said solemnly. I tried to delude myself that what I was doing was for justice rather than revenge. But in the end, my thirst for vengeance was far stronger than my sense of justice and I was willing to sacrifice anything just to attain it. I disagree, Tucson said. A need for vengeance may have been your primary motivation but your ultimate goal was to see justice done. That is true justice. Tucson turns to Sano before continuing. You were correct in assuming that I have lost someone dear to me. But make no mistake about it. I follow Aizen-sama because I believe his chosen path is true justice and I will do everything in my power to see it achieved. It is my hope that you follow him for the same reason. Betray him and it shall be me who will mete out his justice. Sano sadly watches as Tucson turns on his heel and walks away. The man was just another unfortunate soul being used by Aizen like a pawn in a demented chess game. A predicament he himself was all too familiar with. But both him and Naoto played by a completely different set of rules and Aizen will soon discover that even pawns can topple the king when moved in the right way. That day was fast approaching. But first, they needed to discuss a few complications to their plans. Are we all here? Stark asks in a bored tone as he looks around the room they were having the meeting in. At first glance, one may think that this group looked extreme why formidable with the inclusion of the current Primera and Tercera Espada as well as 4 ex-Espadas along with 5 of the more powerful and experienced Fractions and 2 more Arancars whose real abilities have yet to be revealed. But the truth of the matter was, they were still heavily outnumbered and outgunned in every conceivable way. Add the fact that the ex-Tercera Espada Nelliel too still can't access her full powers yet. So how was your trip to Soul Society, Niños? How did the babies measure up? Dordoni Alessandro del Socaccio asks. The 103rd Arancar and ex-Espada may be a little weird at times. But nobody can deny his prowess and experience in battle. More than that, Dordoni was honorable, decent and was a good person to talk to. As a matter of fact, Naoto and Sano often went to the elder Arancar whenever they needed advice on something. Terrible, Sano mutters. If we were to attack them now, they'd be slaughtered. How heartbreaking. I had expected better of the Shinaga. But it would seem that they have fallen on hard times. Gantenban Mosqueda said with his arms folded across his chest. The dark-skinned, Afroed 107th Arancar also had his own peculiarities, but was also a loyal and strong ally. You can't really blame him for that. With Aizen screwing around with their system, I'm surprised that their doors ain't wide open right now. Tsuruchi growled. The 105th Arancar didn't harbor any real love for the Shinagamis. Betrayal in any form was something she despised. It was clear to her that Aizen was working for nobody's benefit except his. But here's another thing we need to talk about. Naoto spoke while leaning on a pillar. While me and Sano were in Soul Society, we discovered acquaintances who are now serving as Shinagamis. Naoto's words had the desired effect on everyone present. Their attention were now solely focused on the 2 masked Arancar. I see. Hannibal spoke after a few moments of silence. Is that going to be a problem with you too? It won't be a problem if they don't directly involve themselves in our affairs so that they don't get caught the line of fire. But since they're Shinagamis, that possibility seems unlikely. Sano said. So what are you going to do about this predicament? Stark asks. We're not willing to hurt them if we can help it. But there's only so much we can do as numeros. Naoto said before adding with a foxy smile which was partially hidden by his mask. So I think it's time me and Sano gave Aizen a sample of our true powers. Within the massive throne room of Las Noches, the Espadas, Privern Espadas, Fractions and a few select numeros were gathered for a meeting with Aizen. Welcome brothers and sisters. I have returned and have obtained the means of our victory. Aizen said, as the small pillar which held the Hogokyu rose from the floor. With this, our evolution will be complete and we shall finally be rid of our hated enemies, the Shinigamis. But of course, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish the task had it not been for the assistance of two of our brothers. Aizen continued, looking over the crowd before his gaze settles on Naoto and Sano. With that in mind, I would like to call upon Nemejan Naoto and Azuki Sano to step forward. In a burst of sonido, both Naoto and Sano disappears from their place in the crowd and reappears kneeling on one knee in front of Aizen. Nemejan Naoto, Azuki Sano, in recognition of your accomplishments and service, I shall grant you one request if it is within my powers to give to you. Aizen said with an insincere-looking smile. You are too kind, Aizen-sama. We do not deserve such praise and rewards from you. Sano humbly said, we were merely performing our duties to the best of our abilities. Nonsense. Such efforts should be rewarded. As a matter of fact, I insist on it. Aizen said, if that's the case, then there is one thing we would like. Naoto said, glancing at Sano, who gives him an almost imperceptible nod. There was no turning back from this now. Please allow us to serve you more as your Espadas. Upon hearing the two Arrancar's request, nobody spoke for a full minute. Finally, it was Aizen who broke the silence. You two do realize that the only way for you two to become one of the elite is to defeat one of the existing Espadas and take his or her place, correct? Aizen asks. Yes, we are aware of that, sir. But we would still like the opportunity and we are consequences of failure. Naoto stated. HMMPPP. The Segunda Espada Barragan harumphs derisively as he sat on a throne-like chair surrounded by his fractions. The two of you may be more powerful than the average numero or fraction, but you're nowhere near our level of strength. You're just foolishly throwing away your lives and wasting the boss's generous gift on some misguided delusion. Actually, the Cuatro Espada Ulquiorra spoke up from his spot leaning against a pillar. We have yet to see the full extent of their abilities. So judging them to be weaker than an Espada at this juncture would be grossly inaccurate. Both Sano and Naoto stiffens at Ulquiorra's statement. Has Ulquiorra discovered their secret? If he has, why hasn't he said anything to Aizen? It's ridiculous to think that these two losers actually have what it takes to beat an Espada. The Quinta Espada Neutra opined. I say we're just wasting our time with them. Then there shouldn't be any problem, right? Jin said with his ever-present smile on his face. Like what these boys say, it's their choice anyways. They wanna play with the big boys. It's their funeral. I would like to know one thing though. Chusen said as he turns to the two masked Arrancars. What is the reason why you two want to become Espadas? It has been our goal from the very beginning to work our way up till we get an opportunity to become part of the elite. Sano stated. And even though we look up to the Espadas as a whole, we feel that we can contribute more to Aizen-sama's cause than certain members. Aizen scrutinizes the two closely for a few moments before nodding his head with a smile. You two have shown initiative and I like that. Very well then, I shall allow this even if it means that I shall be losing two excellent warriors whichever way this goes. Murmurings can be heard around the room about Aizen's decision. I suppose you have chosen the ones you wish to challenge for their spots. The two masked Arrancars looks at each other briefly before turning back to Aizen with a nod simultaneously saying. We have Aizen, Sama, N. Aoto stands up first and turns his attention to the tall figure with the long cylindrical head covered by a mask. Noveno Espada Araniero Erurueri, I wish to challenge you for your spot in the Espada. As you wish, the eerily dual-sounding voice of the Noveno Espada said. Be warned though that I shall not show you any mercy when you plead for your life. Nor will I show you any when you plead for yours. Naoto answered, glaring at his soon-to-be opponent though his mask hid the hostile expression. Sano stands as well and looks at a dark-skinned man sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed in a corner. And I choose you to be my opponent. Septima Espada, Zamari Luru. Zamari opens his eyes and looks at Sano. I accept. You will be an example of what happens to those who do not now their proper place and you shall be losing your life for nothing. My proper place is serving Aizen-sama as an Espada and you are in my way. Sano said, the eyes of his mask momentarily glowing red ominously. Very well then. Since everything is settled, we shall all meet at the indoor arena in an hour to give the four of you time to prepare. And since you've also decided that no quarters will be given, it shall be a fight to the death. Until then, everyone is dismissed. Aizen decreed. An hour later. Are you sure they're gonna be alright, Stark? Lilynette asks worriedly for what seems to be the nth time as she and the Primera walks along the corridor on their way to the indoor arena. I mean, they are fighting Espadas after all. If they were any other Arrancar, I'd say for certain that they're as good as dead. Stark replies lazily. But even I don't know how strong they really are, so there's a possibility that we might have new Espadas by the end of the day. Lilynette's eyes widens at this. So you're saying that they really might be strong enough to beat the Septima and the Novena? Espada. It will be a difficult fight for them, but they have a chance at succeeding if they keep their composure and carefully plan their moves. Hallibal's voice answered for Stark. A moment later, the Tricera and her Fractions are walking alongside the Primera and his Fractions. It's too late to stop them now anyways. Sun stated. They've already made up their minds and all we can do is just watch and see what happens. Well, you seem awfully calm about all this considering your boy Toy is one of the ones fighting an Espada. Apache observed, smirking as she see a slight blush hidden behind the sleeves of her fellow Fraction, although her eyes held sadness. Knock it off, Apache, Mila Rose said. It's already hard enough watching two of your friends go into battle against monstrous odds like this. Stark looks at the Fraction critically. You don't seem as confident of their chances at succeeding, Mila Rose. Quote, just being realistic, Stark-sama. Mila Rose answers, folding her arms across her chest. As Lilynette pointed out, Sano and Naoto are facing Espadas. And no matter how strong Naoto and Sano are now or how low-ranking their opponents may be, they're still part of the elite, so you'll forgive me if I don't expect too much. Well then, I have a hunch that today will change your mind. The Primera said cryptically with a smile. The group arrives in the indoor arena, which was located below Las Noches and was simply a large pit about 100 meters in diameter and about 100 feet deep, which was built and reinforced specifically for battles like this. All around the mouth of the pit, a large number of Arrancars of all shapes and sizes were eagerly waiting for the fight to begin. Aizen and his cohorts, the Privern Espadas and the other Espadas as well as their Fractions were also already present and waiting. Soon after Stark and company arrived, Sano and Naoto makes their appearance, and a few moments later, so does the Septima and Novena Espada. Since the combatants are already present, we shall begin the duels immediately. Aizen's voice echoes out. Will the Novena Espada Araniero Eruruari and Namejan Naoto proceed to the arena floor, please? Naoto turns to his longtime friend and knocks fists with him with a foxy smile that's visible from under his mask. Well, I guess I'm up first, Tem. Wish me luck down there. Knock 'em dead, dope. Or at the very least, knock him dead. And try not to show off too much, 'cause that's my job. San O replied with a smirk before blurring off and appearing beside Sun, who gives him a small smile. Some last-minute instructions, the Fraction asks, but Sano merely shakes his head and answers. Quote, you can throw plans out the window when Naoto's involved, 'cause he usually likes to wing it. But then again, his unpredictability is what makes him so dangerous in the first place. Back in the arena floor, both combatants appear simultaneously facing each other. After a few moments staring each other down, the Novena spoke. Before we begin, are you certain this is what you want, boy? You know very well that you can't hope to match me, so you still have time to withdraw from this match. Araniero said, sounds to me that you're trying to chicken out of the fight, Araniero-san. The blonde said equally before turning serious and pointing his short spear at his opponent. But to answer your question, yes. I'm pretty sure that I want to wipe that ugly mug off the face of Hueco Mundo. Back on the mouth of the pit, Grimjow was openly laughing at Naoto's antics. Bwahahaha. This kid's a riot even when he's serious. I really hope he kicks Araniero's ass so we can keep him. There ain't gonna be a dull moment with him around. That's for sure. Jin could only chuckle from his spot besides Aizen at Grimjow's comment. So how do you guys think the kid'll do against the current Novena? He asks nobody in particular. It was Aizen who answers. Both Naoto and Sano has shown considerable promise as warriors. And I believe that if they were to win over their opponents, they will be excellent additions to the Espada. Well, Norseman, I hear from you, Tycho. Jin asks, his smile growing wider. Of course not, because it will affect my impartiality. The traitorous captain replies with a smile of his own. It was merely an observation. Back in the arena, the Navina Espada was not happy with how the blonde masked Arrancar had spoken to him. For that insult alone, your end shall not be quick and painless, he said as he removes his mask and reveals a relatively youthful face with shaggy black hair. The odd thing was that he had no fragment to indicate that he was indeed an Arrancar. You don't look like an Arrancar. Exactly what are you? Naoto asks as he brandishes his weapon. Wouldn't you like to know? The human-looking Aroniero said in a normal voice with a smirk as he lifts the sword that suddenly appears in his hand. Here's another surprise for you. Rage through the seas and the heavens, Nejibana. Naoto watches impassively as the Zanpakuto transforms into what seems to be a cross between a trident and a Chinese G, which the Espada twirls around with considerable proficiency. The blonde Arrancar then looks at Aroniero and comments. That doesn't look anything like an Arrancar's Resurrection. As a matter of fact, that looks more like a Shinigami's release. Murmurings can be heard all around at Naoto's statement. Good observation. But this is only one aspect of my powers, and I doubt that I'll need anything more than this, Aroniero said. As that's so, Naruto drawled as he promptly disappears only to reappear above the Navina in a burst of sonido, and D attempts a particularly wicked combo of stabbing and pummeling with his Rochin. Aroniero manages to block the attack but was surprised at how strong and vicious it was. The Navina pushes the blonde back and starts spinning around while twirling his released Zanpakuto. Water then starts to flow from the weapon and the surrounding area around the Espada. What the is he dancing? Naoto thought to himself as he watches his opponent warily. No, wait, with the way all that water is coming out of his weapon, that dance must be part of his Zanpakuto's ability. But before Naoto could decide what to do, the Espada attacks and Naoto was forced on the defensive. Damn, so that's his Zanpakuto's ability. Water manipulation to amplify the power of his attacks or bolster his defense. Getting hit by his weapon feels like getting slammed by a tidal wave. And with the way he's moving, he ensures that there's always a stream of water to block my attacks. Naoto analyzed as he worked on blocking the Espada's attacks. If that's the case, time to switch tactics. Naoto jumps back, then charges right back in at the Espada. But instead of attacking him directly, Naoto fires a point-blank Sero at the ground between them, causing a thick, choking cloud of dust to rise from the pit. Now what was the point of firing a perfectly good Sero on the poor, defenseless ground like that? Lilinet wondered aloud. Naoto may be trying to hide his movements from Aroniero. Tsuruchi answered. He can't hide his Reiatsu, so he opted to try and keep his opponent guessing on what he's going to do next. Inside the thick dust cloud, Aroniero was defending himself from Naoto's attacks, which came randomly and from different directions and angles. But the problem was, while he could feel the Arrancar's presence, it was difficult to tell where the attacks would come from, especially since the dust cloud was effectively concealing his opponent from view. What's more, he could feel the water flow from his Zanpakuto grow slower and more difficult to control because of all the dust. Excellent tactic, trying to slow down Nejibana's ability by mucking it up with dust. Aroniero commended as he parry a spear stab and narrowly avoids being clobbered by the mace, which seemingly came from another direction inside the dust cloud. But it still won't do you any good. The bit about the dust mucking up the water was just a coincidence. A voice below the Espada said suddenly. Aroniero looks down and sees Naoto lying on his back with a charged orange-colored Sero in a palm pointed straight at him. But this isn't. Aroniero leans back to avoid the Sero while simultaneously trying to stab Naoto. But the blonde Arrancar was quickly able to dodge the potentially fatal attack. His Sero, however, burns through the ceiling up to the surface and allows a ray of daylight to shine down on the pit. Under the harsh glare of Hueco Mundo's sun, Aroniero's human-like features begins to shift and shape like clay, allowing everyone to see his true face for the first time. Now that's a face only a mother could love, assuming he even has any, Apache said as she looks at the cylindrical tube with T. floating ping-pong-shaped faces which served as Orochimaru's head. Naoto took one look at the revealed Navina Espada and chuckled. So that's what you really look like under that mask, Now I understand why you want to hide your face and stay in the shadows. We don't really care what you think because we've heard it all before, Orochimaru said in his dual-sounding voice, stepping back into shadows as his head starts to shift back to its more human-like appearance. And we stay in the shadows not because we're worried about our appearance but because our powers are at its peak. There. Orochimaru then scratches the back of his head, irritably. Seriously, we don't know what they were thinking when they created an artificial sun in a dark place like Hueco Mundo, especially when the are beings here who can only use their full powers in the darkness. I see. You have my sympathies for whatever it's worth, Naoto said, taking a stance. Be that as it may though, I still can't afford to take it easy on you. There's too much at stake. The Navina Espada's faux face quirks an eyebrow in amusement. What's this? It sounds as if you really think you can win this fight. His face then darkens as he continues. As you just saw, we are Jillians. Normally, Jillians don't have the necessary abilities to become an Espada, and yet here we are standing before you as the Navina. Do you know why? No, I don't, but I'm sure you'll educate me on the reasons, Naoto said cheekily. Ignoring the barb, Orochimaru's face splits into a demented grin. That's because we are the only Arrancar with unlimited evolutionary potential. I told you before that this is only one aspect of our abilities, correct? Well, the spiritual entity fusion we are using right now originally belonged to a hollow named Metastasia who fought a Shinigami named Shiba Kyan. And when Metastasia's rotting spiritual body was returned to Hueco Mundo, we consumed it and took his powers. You ate the body of Metastasia, Naoto said in disgust. While it was true he himself also ate other hollows to increase his powers, he did so in combat and didn't act like some sort of scavenger. Correct, Orochimaru said as he removed the glove on his left hand, revealing a mass of tentacles with a mouth. Our true power is called Glotoneria, and it's the ability to consume dead hollows to take their spiritual energy and abilities. This form was acquired when we ate Glotoneria, who had the power to fuse himself with other spirits. He had possessed Shiba Kyan before he died, so this is the Shinigami's actual spiritual body which contains all his powers, energies, skills and experiences. So in effect, you're just relying on someone else's power to fight me. Now that's just sad, Naoto stated. Orochimaru scowled at the insult but chose not to get worked up over it since it was probably the blonde's intent in order for them to lose their composure. We admit to underestimating you, Namejan Naoto. You seem fairly powerful, so in recognition of your strength, we shall show you an Espada's release. Devour him. Glotoneria, dead. Hollow Eater. Orochimaru's lower body starts to morph and shift until it transforms into a large purple octopus-like blob with teeth and tentacles. The Navina Espada looks at his opponent and smirks. Behold the physical manifestation of all the hollows we've consumed. Glotoneria can all 650 of our victims simultaneously, so fighting us is like single-handedly fighting an army of over 30,000 hollows. Orochimaru then sends his tentacles after Naoto, who chops them off only for it to grow back and begin their assault again. Naoto then tries to quickly move around and dodge the attacks while looking for an opening, but with so many tentacles, he was having a difficult time. Finally, after being clipped by the wave of water from Nejibana, one of the tentacles snags Naoto's ankle and repeatedly batters him against the walls of the pit and slams him onto the ground before Orochimaru blasts him with a powerful Sero. It's over. Your trash of a buddy won't be able to get up after an attack like that, Natitra said, leering at Sano, who surprises the Quinta by smiling. On the contrary, the fight's over for the Navina. Watch and see, Sano said. The Navina looks down at Naoto, whose body laid smoking and unmoving on the floor. You've done well lasting this long against me. But it's over now, and we shall consume you and take your spiritual powers and abilities to add to our own. He then lifts Naoto up by the ankle and prepares to eat him, but the blonde Arrancar suddenly lifts up his hand and tries to blast Orochimaru again with another Sero. Orochimaru manages to fling Naoto away before he can launch his attack. Naoto recovers in mid-air and lands back on his feet, brushing G dirt from his clothes and looking none the worse for wear. Damn, I really thought I got you that time. You're faster than you look, you know that. Naoto groused as he picks up his Rochin. Before eaching up to his mask and noticing that Orochimaru managed to break off the top right half just above the whisker-like protrusion and revealing a cerulean blue eye. You also managed to break off part of my mask, which I have to say isn't a very smart thing to do. So you managed to survive our attack. We clearly underestimated you, Orochimaru said, sounding calmer than he actually felt at seeing Naoto relatively unscathed from his attack. But it will make you taste all the more sweeter when we finally devour you. The Navina then tries to batter him with a tentacle. But much to the surprise of everyone present, Naoto easily blocks the appendage with one hand, which in itself is no easy feat given the strength of the blow, which causes the ground Naoto was standing on to crack. That's not gonna happen cause I'm done playing around with you, Naoto retorted, his revealed eye flashing red and all traces of humor gone from the ex-shinobi's voice as he flings the tentacle away and starts building up spiritual pressure. I really didn't want to do this cause I still think it's too early, but I have no other choice. He's going to release his Zanpakuto soon, Sun stated, but he doesn't sound too happy about it. You're gonna have to walk in his shoes to really understand why. Sano replied, all I can say is that he's about to transform into something that he's been successfully avoided becoming all his life. A monster. Naoto twirls his Rochin around, then tosses it up into the air. Thrash, Vulpino Guerrero, Fox Warrior Prince. He intones as the weapon explodes into a thick red smoke which fills up the pit and the general atmosphere grows noticeably heavy. Is this Naoto-kun's real power? Chiruchi whispers to herself as she feels sweat dripping down her forehead. Amazing. He was holding back this much power, Chusen said, genuinely impressed by the blonde. Aizen smiles deviously and observes the battle more closely. Now we shall see what he's truly capable of. Back in the pit, the red smoke dissipates and reveals Naoto's released form for all to see. The blonde Arrancar was down on all fours and his entire body was now encased in a skeletal armor with a fox's skull for a helmet. Pick-like protrusions along the spine and long forelimbs with long, sharp claws. But the most noticeable part about his transformation is the four segmented tails waving behind Naoto. Author's note. Kinda like Naruto's Kyuubi form when he fought Pain. Kyuubi, Sano whispered as he watches his friend start to stalk his opponent. Impressive power for an Arrancar. But not enough to defeat us, Orochimaru said. I'm not looking to impress you. Naoto growls in a guttural-sounding voice. I'm here to kill you. Quicker than the eye could see, Naoto pounces at Orochimaru. The Navina swings at Naoto, but the blonde Arrancar disappears in midair and reappears on the ground behind Orochimaru. A moment later, long, bloody furrows made by claws appears in the Navina's upper body. And the blob-like extension that was his lower body. How did you? Orochimaru started to say but was cut short when Naoto disappears again and the Navina soon found himself being assaulted from seemingly multiple directions simultaneously by Naoto, whose movements were so fast and violent that not only was he damaging the Espada, he was also leaving deep gouges on the pit floor and wall. The blonde Arrancar reappears in front of the Navina, his released form's claws and surprisingly, his four tails slick with blood that was not his own. What's the matter? Don't tell me this is all that an Espada is capable of. Naoto asks mockingly. How dare you? Who the hell do you think you're dealing with? A battered and bloody Orochimaru snarls, losing control of his disguise and whatever composure he had left as a huge mouth opens wide on his blob-like lower body and starts generating a powerful vacuum force. We'll consume everything here and become the true king of Hueco Mundo. Deranged and pathetic. I pity you. But I suppose I have to give you the respectable end you deserve as an Espada. Naoto said as he spreads out his tails and starts gathering energy there. Farewell, Navina Espada Orochimaru Erwariru. Sero Salva, burst Sero. The energy on Naoto's tails combines into a large, orange-colored sphere of compressed Reiatsu and shoots off like a cannonball towards the gaping mouth of the blob-like lower body of the Navina, which swallows the attack and shuts itself. At first, nothing seems to happen. But a few moments later, Orochimaru's entire body balloons grotesquely. Own the explosion of energy inside him before starting to dissolve into spirit particles. Damn it all. We can't believe someone like you managed to. This was all Orochimaru, man. Aged to say before he completely dissolved. There was a dead silence all around before Aizen's voice spoke. Winner and the new Navina Espada, an aspect of greed. Namejan Naoto. After resealing his Zanpakuto, Naoto disappears and reappears beside Sano, who knocks fists with his friend. You took too long against him. You could have just released from the beginning and finished him off early. San-o said in mild reproach, to which Naoto simply shrugs his shoulders. I wanted to see how strong he was. Naoto said, I was curious to see what his resurrection looks like. You still took unnecessary risks. However weak he may seem, Orochimaru is still an Espada. Chiruchi spoke up as she appears beside Naoto, scanning for any injury. But forget about him. Are you alright? Apart from a few scratches, I'm good. Naoto replies before turning serious and looking at Sano. But more importantly, you're up next, Tem. Be careful with him cause he doesn't look like a pushover. Sano looks at Naoto before turning to watch Zamari stand up and Sonito to the pit floor where he patiently waited. I know Dobi. Don't worry about a thing though. I'll get the job done. Sano said as he jumps down to the pit floor for his fight with the Septima. I hope you're done saying goodbye to your companion. Zamari said as he drew his Zanpakuto. That was your final opportunity to do so. Sano turned his full attention on the Septima Espada as he also draws his own Zanpakuto and his eyes glows red. You seem quite certain of yourself when you don't even know what I'm capable of. I don't need to know what you are capable of doing. Another voice spoke from behind Sano before a blade erupts from his chest, revealing another Zamari behind the raven-haired Arankar NT of him fades away. All I need to K. Now is that my power far surpasses yours. Sun gave a small gasp. Oh no, he got him. Look again, Naoto said with a grin. Sano ain't done by a long shot. To the surprise of everyone present, the Sano impaled on the Septima's blade also fades away and Zamari had to jump back to avoid an attack from above by the raven-haired Arankar. A small slice on the fabric of the Septima's uniform reveals just how close the attack had been. Still think your power far surpasses mine? Sano asks with a smirk. I wouldn't be so quick to judge others if I were you. You're liable to get killed far too easily if you do that on a regular basis. Zamari narrows his eyes at Sano. I see that you have some rudimentary understanding of my gemello's Sonito. Not many are even fast enough to be able to pull it off. But, not one but 5 Zamaris appears and surrounds Sano. Whatever understanding you may have pales in comparison to my own mastery. Sano reacts quickly by slashing at the 2 Niers. Zamaris, which are revealed to be just afterimages before the other 3 stabs him. But much to the Septima's surprise, what was impaled on his sword was just Sano's upper garment and the raven high. Red Arankar himself is seen standing further away, bare-chested. You're not the only one with high-speed techniques. Here is my Senuelo, shedding, Sonito. Sano said before slashing at another Zamari that appeared behind him. And you've used your gemello's Sonito one too many times, so I don't need to be as fast as you to keep up. I just need to read your moves and anticipate where and when you're attacking next. So just because you think you can read my moves, you believe that you are already at my level. How foolish, Zamari said as he turns to face Sano and starts to gather his Reiatsu. Then I will have to show you the error of your beliefs. Allow me to demonstrate just how powerless you are when faced with my Amor. The Septima then slowly releases his hold on his Zanpakuto, which floats in front of him. Goes into an unusual wide-legged posture, claps his hands together and turns his head till it is parallel to his body. Suppress, Brujeria, witchcraft. The Zanpakuto twists into a crooked-looking spiral, then bursts into smoke which solidifies on the Septima Espada, who transforms into a largely humanoid form with a pumpkin-like lower half and has eyes all over his body. Sano was instantly wary. While Zamari's released form seemed more comical than threatening, he was still the Septima Espada for a reason and he wasn't taking any chances. He was particularly concerned with all the eyes on the Septima's released form and deduced that they may have something to do with his powers. Deciding that the best defense was a strong offense, Sano holds out a palm and starts charging a Sero. But the Septima simply holds out his own palm in response, where an eye glows briefly. Instantly, Sano could feel the hand with the charged Sero involuntarily move towards his own head. And only by moving it to the side was he able to avoid decapitating himself with the powerful beam of Reiatsu. Upon looking at his arm, Sano notices a sun-like tattoo and tries to rub it off. That won't work. Your left arm is already mine. Zamari said. What are you talking about? Sano asks. Everything has a certain sovereignty to it. Zamari started to lecture. Underlings are controlled by their leaders, subjects are controlled by their kings, clouds are controlled by the wind, moonlight is controlled by the sun. Brujeria has the ability to steal the sovereignty of whatever it sees. And I call this ability, Amor. Zamari continues. But instead of just merely telling you about it, allow me to demonstrate once again. Left arm, grab his neck. Sano's marked arm twitches before starting to go for his own neck. In a move which surprises many, Sano slashes at his own arm and allows it to fall and hang limply at his side. Cutting the muscles and tendons of your arm was a logical course of action. But I still have the rest of your body to choose to control. Zamari said as the eye in his palm glows again. This time, Sano starts using his Sonido to quickly move around and prevent the Septima from locking onto him. The dark-haired Arrancar then appears behind the Septima, ready to attack. But an eye on the Septima's back glows and forces Sano to retreat quickly and reappear at a distance in front of the Espada. But a twitch and a sun-like tattoo on his right leg told him that he didn't get away clean. So you can gain control using any eye on that body of yours, E.H.S. Anyo comments as he examines the tattoo on his right leg. Correct. It doesn't matter where you'll attack because so long as I can see you, you can never escape my Amor. Zamari said. Now, then right leg, take a few steps forward please. Just like with his left arm, the right leg starts moving on its own and only by cutting the muscle and tendon was Sano able to make it stop. A futile action at best. Zamari stated. And it will only get worse if you continue to resist. I can grant you a quick and honorable death if you'll admit your arrogance in thinking that you even have a chance against me. Now who's being arrogant? Sano retorted. Didn't I tell you to stop underestimating your opponents when you haven't even seen what they can do? Well, now you're about to see what I can do. Anyo then flips his sword and holds it in a reverse grip and holds it out in front of him as his spiritual pressure skyrockets and the atmosphere around him starts to waver because of the rising heat. Here we go. Naoto said with a knowing grin, fully aware of what his friend was about to do. Don't worry though, your arrogance won't be the cause of your defeat. It's simply going to be the difference of our powers. Sano said as his eyes glow red. Ignite, Bahamut, Darkest Dragon King. Sano's entire body is engulfed in black flames so intense that the surrounding area is reduced to a pool of magma. The black flames dies down and reveals Sano in his released form. A helmet resembling a dragon's skull now covered his entire head. Sano also now wore armor over his upper torso, forearms and shins and had large, bat-like leather wings on his back. Black fire once again engulfs his entire form as Sano takes to the air and charges at his opponent. Predictably, Zamari tries to take control of him using his Amor, but when Sano doesn't stop, he is forced to use Sonido to dodge the raven-haired Arrancar's fiery dive-bomb attack. I missed. That has never happened before. The Septima wonder. D to himself as he watched Sano reverse his course in midair and come back for a second run at him. Deciding not to take any chances, he turns the eyes on both palms and on the front of his body towards the hurtling fireball that was Sano. But like before, his Amor had no visible effect on Sano as he did not even slow down in the least. And once again, he had to resort to using his Sonido to dodge. But this time, a scorch mark on his shoulder told the Espada that he didn't get away without a scratch. Well, what do you know? Looks like I was able to correctly guess the nature of your abilities. Sano said with a smirk. The nature of my abilities? What nonsense are you talking about? And how were you able to block my Amor? Zamari demands angrily. My abilities called Infierno, Hell. Sano said. It allows me to superheat my Reiatsu and create black flames. I can use these flames to protect me from physical harm and anything else up to the relatively high-level Kido spells which the Shinigamis like to use. Sano then pointed at Zamari. I was able to correctly guess that your ability is Kido-like in nature, so your Amor is useless against my Infierno. Impossible, Zamari exclaimed as he directed all his eyes, which included the 3 extra eyes on his forehead, towards Sano. Take my Amor, take it, seemingly ignoring the rants of the Espada as he continued to attempt his Amor with no effect. Sano continues his monologue. There's something else you need to know about my Infiernos touches you, the only one who can put it out is me. The scorch mark on Zom. Mary's shoulder suddenly rekindles and the black flames quickly spread all over the Septima's body. Try as he may, he couldn't put out the flames. It's been fun, Zamari Luru. But this is where the game ends. I'll be taking your spot now, but rest assured that the ranks of the Espada shall be stronger with me as the Septima. And with a snap of his finger, Sano causes the flames engulfing Zamari to intensify, and all the Septima Espada could do was scream Aizen's name as he was reduced to ashes. A splendid duel masterfully fought and won, Aizen declared. Welcome to our ranks Septima Espada, an aspect of intoxication, Azuki Sano. Now will you and our new Navina step forward and receive your marks. Both Sano and Naoto appears in front of Aizen in a blur of Sonido where an unranked Eren car servant burned their numbers to their chosen part of their bodies. Naoto's on his stomach where the Shiki Fuin was, and Sano's on the left side of his neck where his cursed seal used to be. Now if there is nothing else, Aizen started to say before he was interrupted. Please wait, Aizen-sama, if I may be allowed to speak. The Octava Espada Shazal Aporo Grants said. Aizen studies him for a moment before motioning for him to continue. The Espada blurs to the pit floor and kneels with his head down in front of Aizen. Just half an hour ago, I also received a challenge for my position as an Espada and I decided to accept it. You decided to accept the challenge without consulting Aizen? Sama, Tusen asks. This is highly irregular and improper of you. I completely agree with you and I apologize for it, the Octava said, but the reason why I accepted it was because I wanted to make an example of him in front of all my peers and put him in his proper place. Please allow me this one request, Aizen-sama. Aizen thought about it for a moment before nodding. Very well, I shall allow this for now. Please call out your opponent then so we can get this duel underway. Kukuku. Is no need to call him because he is already here. And this duel is no longer necessary because I have already won. The voice that answered sent chills down the spines of both Naoto and Sano. Try as they may, they could never forget who it belonged to. In front of everyone's eyes, the Octava suddenly clutched his throat as something slowly but surely started coming out of his mouth. The outer layer that resembled drops to the floor like a snake's skin when it has molted, and in his place stood another figure. Apart from the mask fragment on the back of his head which resembled a cobra's hood in a wardrobe which resembled that of the ex-Navina, there was no mistaking the pale complexion and the yellowish, slitted eyes. Well now, Aizen stated, his expression unreadable. It seems like we have a new Octava Espada as well. Can you tell us your name? Brother. The former snake Sanin gives Aizen a low bow which hides his smirk and answers. My name is Orochimaru Aizen-sama and my humble capabilities are at your service. Do we really have to do this? Naoto asks for what seems like the nth time as both he and Sano follow Jin down a long, winding staircase to the barracks of the Numeros to pick out their new fractions. I mean, both Araniero and Zamari got along fine without subordinates and Yami doesn't seem inclined to get one anytime soon. And what about the new Octava? Isn't he supposed to be with us too? Yami's too violent and idiotic to entrust with a fraction, and both Zamari and Araniero are special cases cause they're too creepy. The new Octava has decided to retain the services of Shazal's old fractions for the meantime. Jin replied with a smile. Aizen Taiko wants the Espadas to take in and train up more promising Arankars in the unlikely event T. Had one of you needed to be replaced for one reason or another. Besides, having someone to boss around can be fun too, you know. I don't really mind having fractions, Sano stated, but I'd want Somio. Nay, who doesn't think they're hot stuff just because they're an Arankar? We've met more than our share of those kinds of idiots. I bet you have. That's why I'm talking. You guys to the newbies. Barracks. Jin said. They're new enough not to have an inflated ego but strong enough to have serious chips on their shoulders, especially if you push them too hard. Naoto perks up at hearing this. So you've got some hard cases there, huh? Sounds like fun. Anybody worth our time? Jin chuckles at the blonde's reaction. I knew you'd say that, and I've scouted out a few promising ones. But instead of telling you about it, I'll let you see 'em for yourselves, he said as they neared the barracks, only to hear loud crashes, vicious-sounding growls and bloody obscenities. Sounds like quite a lively bunch. Hope their bite is worse than their bark, Sano said dryly. Naoto could only sweat drop as the commotion inside the barracks grew louder and the insults being hurled back and forth became more vulgar. They sound a little too lively for me. Maybe we should intervene before they kill each other and we end up with no fractions at all, Naoto suggested. An excellent idea, Jin said as he flares his Reiatsu. At such close proximity, the power of the former Shinigami captain left even Naoto and Sano a little short of breath. And they had a feeling that behind his smiling facade, Jin meant the act as some sort of warning to them as well. Opening the door to the barracks, the two new Espadas could see the effect that Jin's Reiatsu flare had on the lesser Arankars. Most were knocked flat on the floor and some were even unconscious. But when their attention turns to the ones who still had the strength to look up and see who came in, their eyes, which were thankfully hidden behind their masks, widens in shock and recognition. Down on all fours but still managing to glare at them was their old friend Inuzuka Kiba. Kiba's appearance remained largely unchanged down to the triangular marks on his cheeks, with the exception of the rectangular bone fragment on his forehead which had a pair of eye holes. The former Ninken user also wore an all-white fur-lined hoodie version of the standard Arankar jacket, as well as the standard white hakama and black tabi shoes. And sheathed on his side was his Zanpakuto, which took the form of a wicked-looking machete with a serrated edge. Besides Kiba was, and on one knee was another familiar face in the form of Konoha's former snake mistress, Mitarashi Anko. The remains of her mask seems to be the fanged, open half mask on the bottom part of her face. In addition, she opted to wear a white trenchcoat over an all-white ensemble of a sports bra, shorts and knee-high boots. Anko's Zanpakuto, which she was using to prop herself up, took the form of a military-issue katana with a handguard. The last that Naoto had seen these two was during Sasuke's invasion of Konoha as among the casualties. The former Rokudaime heard that Kiba had gone berserk AF. Orochimaru was killed and had to be stopped by Hana. The trauma of losing his partner coupled with his grievous wounds had been too much for the former Inuzuka heir. As for Anko, it was reported that someone took control of her through her cursed mark and had killed many of her comrades in the interrogation department before being slain herself through the combined efforts of Ibiki and Inoichi. Naoto felt relief and at the same time dismay at the sight of his old comrades. Relief that he was able to see them again and dismay that they had to meet under their present circumstances. For Sano, seeing them only brought up unpleasant memories of his crimes against his home village and friends. Crimes which eventually led to their deaths and crimes which he was determined to make amends for. The two individuals across the former Konoha nins were the ones Naoto and Sano were more concerned about. The red-haired female on her stomach glaring up at them and softly muttering a string of obsc entities was the kunoichi they knew as Tayuya, who now wore an all-white version of her, well as a white-black turban on her head. Her turban probably concealed the remains of her mask and the long flute. On small of her back is apparently her Zanpakuto. Even death has not tamed the foul mouth and temper of the former sound nin. The six-armed Kidomaru sat beside Tayuya. Apart from the bony spider's head covering the upper left part of his face, he now wore a jacket tailored to accommodate all six of his limbs and a standard white hakama. On his back, he had not one but 6 hookswords which they weren't entirely sure if they were all his Zanpakuto. The cold, cruel way Kidomaru was looking at them reminded Naoto of a spider studying its prey. Naoto and Sano had nothing on the pair from the form sound 5 apart from their brief but memorable encounter with them during the initial retrieval mission. But from what they knew of their abilities, Naoto and Sano were aware that they may pose many problems for their cause, especially if they were snatched up by Orochimaru unless they beat him to it. Hey now, what's with all the ruckus in here? Jin asks cheerfully while still flaring his Reiatsu. Are you freaking kidding me? You keep up that bitchy attitude of yours and you're bound to have your collective asses whooped sooner or later. Kiba countered. What makes you so gotta? MNED sure that you can get away with calling the rest of us here weaklings? Because it's the truth. Kitamura answered with a smirk. Face the facts, punk. None of you here can match up to either of us. Is that right? Anko said with a smirk of her own. Then tell me who were the ones beating you two down like your drunken stepfather just a few minutes ago. If we're weak, then what do you guys call yourselves? Sano and Naoto looks at each other. While it was obvious that the ex-shinobis had no memories of their past lives, the bad blood between them still existed despite being strangers to each other. All right, all of you break it up. Jin spoke up before things escalated and stops flaring his Reiatsu, much to the relief of all Arankars present. We're here to pick out Frachi. Ons for the new Septima and Novena Espada here, so if you stay on your best behavior, you might be chosen for the job. Jin then turns towards the two new Espadas. Take your time, boys, and knock yourselves out. There is no need to drag this out longer than necessary. We've already made our choice. Sano said. Ho, that was quick. Jin said with a smile. Don't you need to see how strong they are or something? There'll be plenty of time to assess their performance while they're working for us. Naruto said with a shrug. If we don't like them, then it's as simple as getting them replaced. Fine. Then by all means make your choices. Jin said. Sano glances at Naoto, who nods at him to go first. Sano then walks up and looks at Anko and Kitamura. You and you, what are your names? Mitarashi, Anko, Kitamura. They even retained their old names. Sano thought to himself in amusement. You two seem somewhat competent, so I trust that you won't have any trouble working with each other. I'd hate to release you from your duties and look for new fractions. Both Anko and Kitamura nods their heads and visibly gulps. It was a subtle threat from Sano, but they had a feeling that their new master would have no problems following through his threat. We are at your command, my lord. Both said, kneeling down in front of Sano before taking their places by his side. Naoto could only sigh as he looks at the two remaining candidates available to him. Kiba and Tayuya probably got along as well as oil and water. But he would get around that problem the same way Sano got around his, even though it was not the usual way he did things. I guess that leaves me with you two maggots. Naoto said to Tayuya and Kiba, and cuts off the red-haired former Kunoichi before she could say anything. Let me tell you this from the start. You two better learn to tolerate each other while working for me, cause if you don't, the alternative is that I grind you up like so much sausage and feed your remains to the scavengers in the Manos forest. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Naoto asks, emphasizing his point by flaring his own Reiatsu. Sano could only chuckle as he watched his friend ream out a now visibly pale Kiba and Tayuya. What Naoto lacked in finesse, he more than made up for in brutality. And I think we're done here. Jin said with a smile. Congratulations on having your very own fractions, gentlemen. Their development will be your responsibilities from now on, so good luck. We'll probably need it, Naoto thought to himself, looking at the silently bickering Kiba and Tayuya with a sigh. He had a lot of work ahead of him. Sano was walking back to his quarters with his fractions after a training session in the deserts. Thus far, both Anko and Kitamura were being professionally compliant and had put aside their differences while under his command. Not really surprising, since both had been competent and experienced shinobis in their previous lives despite their personality queer KS, and were used to taking orders without question. Ability-wise, both were much stronger, faster and smarter than the average Arankar. These traits made them quite valuable as potential allies. On the flip side though, this would also make them troublesome foes should they decide to take Aizen's side, though he had no intention whatsoever on letting that happen anytime soon. Greetings, Septima Espada Azuki Sano. Sano had to force himself not to go for his sword upon hearing the eerily familiar voice of one of his most hated enemies. He calmly turns around and sees Orochimaru leaning against a post eyeing him and his fractions. Octava Espada Orochimaru, is there anything I can help you with? Sano asks in a dispassionate tone of voice. Kukuku. Oh, nothing really. Orochimaru answered. Simply wanted to go around and introduce myself properly to my peers in the ranks of the Espada. I imagine that many of you may be a little suspicious of me, especially since I am a total stranger to you. I am here to alleviate your concerns. Out of the corner of his eye, Sano notices Anko tense up at seeing the former snake Sanin. He figured that her reaction was already hardwired into her desk, i.e. the fact that she didn't remember who Orochimaru was in her current form. Kidomaru had all 6 arms crossed in front of him and was narrowing his eyes at his former leader. Like Anko, even though Kidomaru didn't know Orochimaru now, Sano could clearly see the hate and mistrust in the former Sound 4 member's visible eye. This meant that even within Otogakure, Orochimaru must not have been a very popular figure. You imagine correctly, Orochimaru. The rest of your new brethren in the ranks of the Espada are wary of you and your intentions, especially since we know nothing about you. Sano stated, narrowing his eyes from within his mask. But please don't confuse our vigilance and concerns for weakness, because it is a mistake not many can get to repeat. Kukukuku. Such a bold statement. From someone who is also a newcomer to the ranks of the Espada. Orochimaru stated with a chuckle. Aren't you getting a little ahead of yourself? Sano-sama is nothing like you. Anko snaps, not able to restrain herself any longer. He's had to work to get to where he is right now, so he's earned his spot in the Espada, which is more than I can say for you. Instead of getting angry, Orochimaru airily glances at the ex-snake mistress in amusement. My Sano-san, your little pets need to know where their place is and learn some manners. Orochimaru said as his hand drops to his Zanpakuto. Would you like me to teach it to her? Before things could escalate any further, a voice cuts in. Hey guys, is there a problem here? Naoto and his fractions walks into view, and upon seeing the former snake Sanin, Hiba starts growling low while Tayuya was openly glaring at him. It's nothing really, Naoto, Sano said, not taking his eyes away from Orochimaru. Just a little debate on issues. Yes, me and the Septima were merely having a little urtain matters. Orochimaru seconded, his hand moving away from his Zanpakuto at seeing that it would probably be suicide to go up against 2 Espada. Nothing for you to be concerned about. Quote, so you say, Naoto stated, resisting the urge to just outright destroy the man. Even when he was speaking politely, it still sounded like he was insulting them. After all, violent conflicts are prohibited here inside Las Noches, and infighting amongst the Espada will send a bad message to the rest of the Arrancar army. Kukukuku. That it will. Well said, Namejan Naoto, Orochimaru stated with an evil smile which slips upon hearing Naoto's next words. But to deliberately provoke someone into fighting for your own purposes is even more unacceptable. Naoto said in a low, dangerous tone. I don't know how you managed to defeat the former Octava, and frankly speaking, I don't really care. But if you do anything to jeopardize our cause, which includes the warriors who believes in it, Octava or not, I will not hesitate to destroy you myself. Are you threatening me? Orochimaru hissed angrily. Threats are merely empty words for those who don't have what it takes to back it up. That was a promise. Naoto replied evenly before adding. And I always keep my promises. Orochimaru's serpentine eyes widens ever so slightly at the familiar sounding words. Kukuku. Do you know that the 2 of you remind me of people I knew in my past life? Naoto and Sano showed no outward reaction but inwardly flinched. Nonetheless, they kept their composure as Sano spoke up. Please keep whatever morbid fantasies you may have about us to yourself. Not everyone in the Espada share your preferences, you know. Sano said dryly. True, but not all Espadas are who EY say they are, so one can never really tell. Orochimaru countered. You wanna repeat that, Tem? Naruto said in a dangerous tone of voice. Be very careful with what you're saying if you don't want to eat those words. The potential conflict between them was averted when Tucson suddenly appears between the 2 parties. Excellent. All of you are here, so I do not have look for you individually. The blind ex-Shinigami said. Aizen-sama wants the Espadas and their fractions to meet him in the meeting room now for a meeting. Orochimaru didn't bother to say anything but merely glares at Sano and Naoto before disappearing. Once he was sure that the Octava was gone, Tucson turns to the Septima and Navina. Both of you have shown admirable restraint in the face of such provocation in this telephone. Me that Aizen made the correct choice when he decided to give you 2 the opportunity to become Espada. Chusen commented. How long have you been listening in? Sano asked suspiciously. Long enig. To know that the current Octava may become more of a liability than an asset in the future. It is advisable to watch yourselves around him. Chusen stated simply before turning around. Now come. We have kept Aizen-sama waiting long enough. Chusen then blurs off, followed shortly by Sano, Naoto and their fractions. After the two Espadas shared a look which clearly stated that Orochimaru was not the only person they'd watch out for. Ellipsis. They arrive in the meeting room in time to see Ulquiorra and a battered-looking Yami present themselves to Aizen. Excellent. Now that everyone is here, show us everything you've experienced in the world of the living. Ulquiorra. Aizen instructed. Yes, sir. The pale Espada said as he plucked out one of his eyeballs and crushed it, allowing the particles to float freely in the air. This in turn allowed the other Arankars to experience what he saw and heard in his mission where they invaded the land of the living, confronted Ichigo and his friends as LL is encountering Shihoun Yuichi and Urahara Kazuki. I see, Aizen said after a while. So you decided that Kurosaki Ichigo was not worth killing? Yes, sir. Ulquiorra said. Our orders were to eliminate anyone who might prove to be an obstacle to us and. You're too soft. Ulquiorra looks at the one who spoke. Grimmjow. And look at you, Yami. You're a mess. Grimmjow said, looking at the Dachima. It seems to me that it wasn't a case of you not killing him because he was unworthy, but rather you simply couldn't kill him. Didn't you see what happened? The kid didn't do this to me. It was the guy wearing hats and clogs and the dark-skinned woman. Yami answered. What are you, stupid? I would have squashed them like bugs too. Grimmjow countered. Grimmjow, only you would think that former captains of the Gote 13 would be like lambs to the slaughter. Sano stated with a shake of his head. It was Naoto who answered with a smirk. What he means, dumbass, is that if you seriously think that the goddess of Flash and the founder of the Gote 13's research and development division is that weak, then you're retarded. What the hell did you just call me? Grimmjow asked dangerously. Enough. Ulquiorra cuts in before looking at Grimmjow. You don't understand, Grimmjow. Aizen-sama is not worried about the boy's current abilities. The problem lies with his growth rate because he has tremendous potential. Right now, his powers are extremely unstable, but I sense that if he doesn't self-destruct, he could still be of some use to us. That's why I didn't kill him. I still say you went easy on him. Grimmjow grated. What if you're wrong about him? What if he managed to stabilize his powers and we have to fight him? Then I shall deal with him. Ulquiorra said in a dead voice. Very well then. Aizen spoke up, diverting all attention to him. He's your responsibility, Ulquiorra. Do as you wish with him. Thank you, my lord, Ulquiorra said with a bow. Now if there's no other pending business. You are all dismissed, Aizen said. Ellipsis. Naoto and Sano watched as Grimmjow and his fractions stalked out of the meeting room. That was a risky thing to say, Sano. Naoto said. That's my line. Sano retorted. You shouldn't have antagonized Grimmjow like that. In any case, Ulquiorra is right. This Kurosaki Ichigo's got quite a potential. Naoto said. But if I know Grimmjow, he's gonna be looking to dispute that claim. Agreed. Sano said before he smiles. And this may be just the opportunity that we've been waiting for. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.